Did you know that 85% of your engine wear occurs at startup? Yes, that is correct, and this is where Lower the Friction comes in by putting a protective, lubricating barrier on all moving parts. This now gives you full-time protection to make your engine last longer, run smoother, give you better performance, and improved fuel economy. People across the country are reporting some very exciting results. Go to lowerthefriction.com, place your order, and enter in promo code SOS to get 5% off of your order. That's lowerthefriction.com. All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the weekly Secrets of Saturn livestream. I am Jason Lindgren, your host. This week, we've got someone new with us. That would be Jeran from Jeranism. Jeran, welcome aboard.
Hello, guys. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be interesting. I haven't had a chat like this in its entirety yet. We also have Wayne McCroy, Crow 777, and the Great Baltini. All right, let's make sure everything is working right, because even though I was taking a nap right before this live stream, I still was over here in time to get everything up and running, but DLive is being poo-poo right now, and it's absolutely refusing to work. So I gave up.
Well, Rose is going to restream it off YouTube, so that's all done.
Yeah, I usually try and converse with people as I can. So anyway, that's not happening. So anyway. All right, so the reason what we're going to be doing here tonight is about crypto. Now, old Uncle Elon Musk has been chitter-chattering up a storm about Bitcoin. So, of course, that made all the techies go out and buy tons of Bitcoin, shooting the price up. Oh, I didn't look up. Did it go up again? Let's see. I know the tiny bit of Bitcoin I had went from about $50 worth to $200 and some worth. Right now, it's at $252.02. Okay, so it went back down. It's at $44,000. The highest I'd seen it go was $47,000. I never thought this thing would ever do this a couple years back when I first started just learning about what this stuff is all about. But anyway, the only person I'm really friends with who knows anything about crypto to a large degree is indeed Jeran. So I'm going to hand this to you, Jeran. Where should we start to talk about crypto? What is it? We're going to talk about the pluses, the minuses. If there's any serious poppycock, let's get it out of the way. How it could be used for good and how it could be used for bad, because so many people go back and forth on this stuff all the time. So where would you like to start, my friend?
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, everybody's got doubts about it, and I know I'm somebody who definitely thinks, nearly everything is a conspiracy. So when something pops up and all of a sudden you have people saying, oh, this is different, this is not a conspiracy, or this has benefits, then I can understand why people are standoffish. As far as, real quick, my quick rundown of my story so that people understand a little bit about why I have a different opinion of this than most things is because back in 2013, 2014, so this is before I ever made a YouTube video, I used to write for two different Bitcoin websites, and they used to pay me about 0.3 Bitcoin per article, which at the time was around $75, and I was allowed to do 2 articles a week for each one. So, I was making like $150 excuse me, from each site every week. And, that was actually like 0.6 Bitcoin. It's very sad to think about what that would be today. But one thing that happened to me is that as time went on, I started to see a lot of flaws with it. I thought I saw a lot of, impossibility for the everyday person to get involved. A lot of people were losing coins. A lot of people weren't sure about, or didn't know how to handle their own finances. Things like passwords become much more important. And it's not like Bank of America where, you forget your password, you just hit lost password, they email you, there's no problem at all, though. You'll never lose your money because you lost a password. Or with Bitcoin, you can lose your seed words or lose a password and be gone. It's gone. You'll never get it back. So I started to see some issues with that, and I saw, oh man, this is a kind of a haven for scammers. And so at the end of about 2014, when I was done writing for these websites, I just started to kind of use the Bitcoin to live off of, really. As it went up from $200 to like $400 to $600, I would just sell, a little bit here, a little bit there, basically kind of living off of it, and never really saw a problem with that. I didn't think that it would ever go away, but I just didn't think it would ever get huge. So fast forward to now, and I sold out of my last Bitcoin around 2017, when I think it was about $1,000 at the end of 2017, somewhere around there. And I've gotten back into it now, and really it's just looking back and seeing what a joke I was. I mean, for some of the things I thought, what I didn't realize is with Bitcoin, you can always have innovation, right? So it's an open source code, meaning people can develop new things off of it. They can basically make things more user friendly, and that's what's happened over the last 5 years. So if I would have thought ahead back in 2013, 2014 and said, hey, this could be something big, this could be, people are going to innovate, and I just would have put it away. So, say I had 40 Bitcoin and I put that on a paper wallet and I put it in my safe. Well, today that 40 Bitcoin would make me, about $2 million. So I would have been able to cash it out and probably retire. So it's a pretty upsetting thing to look back. And again, hindsight's 2020. We know that. And also, I can't really think of it that way because I realized that even if it got to 1,000 and I still had those 40 Bitcoin, I would have been like, that's $40,000. I would have cashed. And if I didn't do it then, I would have done it when it got to 2,000. Then I would have done it when it got to 5,000 or 10,000. So to think that I would hold on to it all the way till it was today probably is not realistic. However, if I had a different mindset, it's possible. So my new mindset is simply when I have extra money, I treat it like as if I threw it away. Like I went to the movie, took my wife out to dinner or something, and I just buy Bitcoin. I don't even really look at the amount. I don't even look at, the current price or anything. I just buy it. I put it in my own wallet, and my goal is to not touch it until 20 years. So that's the way I'm looking at it, and I hope that the mindset works the same as it did before. Rather than look at all the problems, I kind of go, okay, there is some problems with it. People can innovate. It'll get easier. It'll get better with time, and it will be vastly more valuable than anything else. And that I base that statement off scarcity. So to me, Bitcoin is by far the scarcest asset in the world, by far. Much more scarce than gold, much more scarce than, you could say the Mona Lisa, Jeran, is more scarce. Okay, good. One person has that. So I'm talking about something that you can actually get a hold of today, and it's scarce, and it will be scarce, and it will only become more scarce with time. And, people might ask, what is a Bitcoin going to be worth in 20 years? Or, and my answer would be a Bitcoin's going to be worth a Bitcoin. Now, what will that Bitcoin buy you? Time will tell. I just wish I would have looked at it like I do today back then, because if I would have done that, then today I would be, wealthy. So my goal is 20 years. I see where that, Bitcoin is at that time. And my guess will be that it will be extremely valuable. How valuable? I don't know. Will I be able to buy a house with it? Not sure. But as far as putting money away today and getting a nice payoff in, say, 20 years, there's not much of a better investment in my mind right now. So that's kind of the story, is just a little bit, if you didn't go through, so when I hear things like it's a government conspiracy, they are, it's the NSA who made it, and there's some sort of trap coming up for the problem that I see with that is I don't think that the government really is, it's not in their interest to, especially somebody like me, to make them wealthy. And all I needed to do was just hold the Bitcoin I had. If I just would have done that, today I would be retired. So to say that that's a government conspiracy, or that, well, what was the conspiracy? What exactly was their goal? If I had $2 million today, I'd be able to be doing all my shows for, free. I wouldn't even have a Patreon. I wouldn't have anything. I wouldn't have to worry about those things. And that's exactly what the powers that be don't want. That's why it's very difficult to do what we do, because there's just not money in it. And they know that, and they keep it that way. And they like to, convince people that, oh, truth is supposed to be free. And it's a great line to tell people when they're spending billions of dollars lying to people. It's very difficult to fight those billions of dollars with basically, one-man shows out of your house. That's basically what we have. So to me, I just see Bitcoin as a possibility that there is a way that we can fight back a little. What would that look like? Well, think about it, that we know what the dollar has done to enslave humanity. We know what finances do to keep people poor, to keep people in the system, to keep people dependent on government. This all is around the whole idea of the dollar. The fact that they keep printing it, they've printed 40% of the total money supply was printed in 2020. We may not see the repercussions of that yet, but they will come. They will eventually come. You can't just keep a debt-based money system, a fiat system going forever. It eventually catches up to itself. Now, will that happen in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years? I don't know. But when you look at how would we ever be able to combat that? Number one, you need to have a decentralized system. It can't be centralized. You can't have somebody at the top that's able to cut you off, turn you off, be able to point a finger and say, you know what, we don't like what Jeran does, so he's not able to transact in Bitcoin. And that's happened to me with both Amazon and it's happened to me with PayPal, where they looked at what I was doing and said, we don't agree with your content, therefore you can't bank with us. And I no longer have PayPal access. I no longer can be an Amazon affiliate. That's the problem with our current monetary system, that you have centralized control where if somebody just doesn't want you participating, they're able to do that. With Bitcoin, it's impossible. There is nobody who can tell me I can't transact in Bitcoin. There's nobody who can turn me off, who's, we're just going to turn off Jeran's account like they do with PayPal. And the reason for that is because it's a decentralized system that runs on a code with no owner, no operator, no main hub, no main system that can be taken down. It's not like what happened with Napster. If you guys remember Napster, the problem with Napster was there was a centralized system. It was all the files existed on one basically server. So when the FBI went in, they shut down the server, and guess what? The whole system went down. So after that, things like BitTorrent came out, right? BitTorrent had this idea where, well, if we separate the files into millions of pieces and put them across millions of computers, then when somebody goes on to download these files, they can grab a little bit from all these different PCs, but nobody can ever shut off the system. So it was the beginning of a decentralized idea or decentralized thought. And basically Bitcoin came along and did the same thing, only instead of with files, said let's do it with the idea of digital money, uncounterfeitable digital files that build themselves on a blockchain that exists on everybody's computer. And that's what Bitcoin did. And that's really what has been so impressive is just that. Now, again, could the NSA have come up with it? Sure. Absolutely. I don't really understand why they would, except for I do get that we know that they wanted to move us into this whole digital age. We know that they're moving everything in that direction. So could this just be a precursor or a setup? Yeah, I mean, you would never be able to say, no, it's impossible, right? But when you look at the code of Bitcoin and you see all the things that have been built off of it, and you see what it has provided some people that I don't think the government would want them to have, then it starts to look like maybe it's possible that it was human beings that did this. And that's really what you would need, right? If we sat down today and said, how can we combat the monetary system that's enslaving us? It would be very difficult, because the first thing we would need to do is we'd need to say, well, we need something that everybody can trust, and we need something that nobody can fuck up, and we need something that we all agree on has value. And it would just get very convoluted very quickly as to creating something that would ever be able to get out like that. When you look at the story behind Bitcoin, that's what happened. You had just a couple guys in the cryptography forum talking back and forth. The guy comes out with this code, the Satoshi, whether that's not real, but whether it's a group of people or one guy or a pseudonym, we don't know. But they basically had this idea and just put it out there, and it started to work. And as more people adopted it and saw its value, it took off from there. But I was saying some of the same things people are saying now back in 2013. Like, I don't see this lasting. I think it's too much of a haven for criminals, for scams. And because of that, I kind of said, okay, well, I'm going to get out of this. I don't think it's going to stand the test of time. However, now we're looking 12, 13 years, and Bitcoin hasn't been knocked off its perch once. Obviously it's very volatile, goes up and down. But I think on a year-to-year basis, if you took an average, I think it's something like well over 200% per year on average, return, which you just don't see in other assets. So, why is it so much better than gold? Well, lots of reasons to me. I mean, you can't go to the grocery store and pay with gold. You're going to have a hard time buying things from the street with somebody who's paying in gold, mostly because China has counterfeited every thing that there ever was. So you're not going to be able to test a gold coin. You're not going to be able to drip acid on it and scrub it on a rock or whatever. So, the problem with that is that's one problem. The other problem with gold is we don't know how much there is. You can think that or they can give us a number. They say, oh, we think there's this much gold, but we don't know if there's really gold in Fort Knox. We don't know if there's really how much gold China has. I mean, these things are unknown. So it's one of those assets that, yeah, it has value, but we really don't know how much exists. With Bitcoin, those two things are generally solved. It's uncounterfeitable. Number one, is that a word? Uncounterfeitable? I don't know. And number two, it is a known quantity, right? So it's a known amount of Bitcoin that there'll ever be, which is why I say it's the scarcest asset in the world. And you can take something, I've done a couple posts on it and talked about it in my shows that pretty amazing that 0.25 Bitcoin, which is, a quarter of Bitcoin. So today that's going to cost you, 12,000. When I told people about this a couple months ago, I guess, at the time it was 5,000 to buy a quarter Bitcoin. The reason that number is important is, and this is not an opinion, this is a mathematical fact, what I'm about to state, is that if you own 0.25 Bitcoin, that you will forever, and I mean for all times, no matter what, own more Bitcoin than 99% of the world. Now, the reason that is, well, number one, we have to make a couple of assumptions to make that claim. Number one, that the population doesn't go down, it only goes up. Okay, so we have to take 7.7 billion and say that number will never go down. So if there's a Dave Weiss kind of event where we go down to 3 billion people, what I just said is not true. I'm basing this off of a $7.7 billion population. And the second assumption is that only 21 million coins will ever exist, which is a fact. So pretty simple assumptions, and then you get from that 0.25 Bitcoin, and to get that number, you can just take the 21 million, divide that by 0.25, and you get 84 million, which, if you think about that, it means there's 84 million possible segments of 0.25 Bitcoin. And by taking that number, the 84 million, dividing it out by the 7.7 billion, you get 0.0109 something, So basically, to exist inside that 1%, you only need to own 0.25. So to me, when I hear something like that, I start thinking, okay, it doesn't mean that you're in the top richest 1% or anything like that. It just simply means that for something that is the scarcest asset that there is, and one of the most valuable assets that there is, that you can own more than 99% of the world forever by getting something that would cost you about $15,000 today. That's pretty amazing, and especially because, somebody has asked me, what do I think a Bitcoin will buy in 20 years? I think it'll buy you $1 million house today. So that's just a complete and total assumption on my part. That's just a prediction. That's about what I see it buying. I can't put a price on that because I don't know what the price of that will be in 20 years. What I can tell you is that think of a house that you would buy for $1 million today. I think one Bitcoin will maybe get you that in 20 years. And the good thing about that is it would cost you, $45,000 today. So is there another way that you could put $45,000 under your pillow tonight, or in 20 years it's going to be worth something, much larger? Not really, right? If you put cash under your pillow or under your bed, the next day it's worth less. And every day after that will be worth less. And if you store that $40,000 for 20 years, I'm not sure what $40,000 will buy you then, but it will certainly be less than it can return you today. So it's not.
How many possible divisions did you calculate?
How many what?
How many divisions can be made out of existing Bitcoin? How many times can it be parceled down? In other words, how many segments could be made?
Oh, a ton, because you got 8 decimal points, eight points after the decimal to the right. What I was just saying is because you can take any number and divide it, 21 million divided by 1 Bitcoin, or 21 million divided by 0.00001 Bitcoin. But the magic number that kind of works out perfectly is 0.25, and I think it's more accurate, probably 0.26, but it's right in there. That one you can divide out, and then you get 84 million segments of 0.25. And the reason that's important is you're trying to find the amount of segments that would put you in to the top 1% by owning one of those. So basically, if you're one of the 84 million people or wallets or whatever you want to call that, it could be companies, whatever. If you're one of those 84 million, then you are statistically, you own more than 99% of the world. Now, granted, somebody could say, well, Jeran, some people in the world are 4 years old and 8 years old. You're absolutely right. And they may not be able to get Bitcoin today, but in 10, 20 years, they will be able to. They will join the population that can get Bitcoin. So that number, as the population goes up, that's what's crazy about that 0.25 number is it doesn't matter, even though we're counting all future people. It doesn't matter how many people were born. Doesn't matter if we get an influx from, the Sirius star system, or they send some aliens and we, double the population tomorrow, and it's all of a sudden 15 billion. You still own more than 99% of the world by just owning that 0.25. So this is the kind of thing that we're not used to being able to figure out, because with money, we never know how much is out there. They constantly print it. It's based on debt. We all know you can't go to the Bank of America. If everybody in your town tried to go to Bank of America right now and collect the money that you have on the account, they only have 10% on hand. So 90% of that money is in in the ether. It's in the internet system, and it's not real money. With Bitcoin, it's nothing like that. They are actual and actually there's only 18.5 right now, so it's even less you'd have to own. The 21 millionth coin won't be released until we're all dead. So in 2140. So we actually won't even ever see 21 million coins.
Is that the mining thing, Jeran? Like, are people still doing that? Because I remember that was a big thing about 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, at the time when Bitcoin started, it was very easy to mine from your own computer or mine from a fairly good GPU. But as time went on, people figured out that the faster and faster your computer was, the more transactions you would pick up, the more money you would make, the more chance you would have of mining the last block or the last transaction in a block, which gives you the block reward. It's kind of like a lottery. And so computers kept getting faster and faster. They started building these ASIC units, which are specifically for mining Bitcoin. And so since they've been building those and people have been buying those, your computer's now pretty obsolete at mining. Not pretty, it is obsolete at mining Bitcoin, meaning that even if you tried to hook it up, there's so many faster, you can call them supercomputers. They're just simply GPUs that can, fly and basically do 4 billion hashes per second. So those kind of machines will always beat you to the punch. They will always grab the transactions first. They will always have a huge advantage over you. And so it's no longer financially feasible or even really honest.
Sounds like robber barons there, Jeran. It's kind of like the guys who owned the railroads. No one else was a contender for what was up for grabs. So basically what you're pointing out here is it's no different. But I would ask a simple question.
Mm-hmm.
The only way a cryptocurrency can fulfill the hopes and dreams is, first of all, to never come under regulation. That means the people at any hub that touch it, control it, purvey it, anything, it cannot come under monetary regulation of any kind. But the problem with Bitcoin is you don't know how it came to be. I think it's something like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think 15% of the code has been seen. Does that ring a bell?
Of Bitcoin?
Yeah. Only the original construction code that you named the fake man, the
Right.
fake Japanese guy who doesn't exist, that supposedly made it, that initial code generation, I think the source code, 15% of it is known. Nobody knows who created it or how it got here. But here's a litany of problems. For all intents and purposes, we've all been using Bitcoin for a long time. Every time we take out a piece of plastic and we buy something, and at no time does a coin or a bill touch us or leave us, we've basically engaged in a crypto transaction with a credit card or a debit card or whatever. It's a similar thing going on there. But the real problem here is, in the same way that right now, as I run Crow 777, the banks have been given permission to turn down any transaction. At the same time, we're told the central banks pumping up the digital dollar to become crypto. I would ask one simple question. Is it possible that the central banks didn't understand that crypto was coming?
It may have been, they may have not known the strength of it, but I think that they would have had to know, and I still think that they know. One thing, because you said a couple things, I'm pretty sure, and I'd have to do more research, that Bitcoin is 100% open source.
It is open source, but I'm pretty reasonably sure that the original construction code has only been seen a very small percentage of it.
So because everybody who deals with Bitcoin, right? So any other coin that's branched off or any coin that's been created, or people like BitPay or these different companies that accept it and transact in it, and people who build wallets around it, they would have to see the entire code in order to implement any part of it, I would assume. I don't really get.
No, that's not exactly true. Do you remember how when we used to use Java way back in the day, how you would compile a file? So all this script, open source script, is running all over the world and people are writing JavaScripts. But back then there were like jar files. It was compiled file and no one could see what was in the compiled file, but they knew the rules to leverage off files. And that's a poor example. But I was just looking at some of the details with some of my friends that are big into metals because they've been eyeing every kind of currency there is right now because nobody has any confidence in fiat, and these guys believe the reset's coming in 21. No questions asked. They will swear to you that the reset's coming in 21, and that part of that may be the devaluation of fiat. But my point here is I wouldn't bet on it, but I am pretty reasonably sure that the original source code, a very small percentage of it, is known. And even if I was off by a factor in some direction there, nobody knows who made it. And that's problematic.
Yes, I would agree with you. I do think we'll have to look into that because for everything I know says that it's completely open code. You'd be able to find and look at it yourself. As far as in order to find something that we could combat, you said it would have to be no regulation. Well, number one, that's going to be impossible in this country. There'll never be a way. Well, let me explain what I mean by that. That right now, Bitcoin is regulated, whether people admit that or not. But it's regulated. Yeah, it's regulated because you have to, in order to buy it or cash out, what they call on and off ramps, you have to do KYC, which means they know exactly who you are and everything about you. Just like if you went to open an account at Bank of America, they're going to ask for all your IDs and know exactly who you are. Same thing with Bitcoin.
Is that so they can tax you, Jeran?
Well, yeah, they're going to tax capital gains if you buy on an exchange. Let's say you buy Bitcoin and it's 10,000, and at the end of 4 years you cash out and it's 100,000. Well, immediately that company is going to generate a report to the IRS that says you made capital gains of 90,000. Now, is that a big deal or not? Depends on who you're talking to, because some people would say, well, I just made 90,000. I really don't mind paying the government a little bit of money. Others of us that believe that's theft might have a different issue with that.
It shows control, though. See, Bitcoin's bragging that it's decentralized and all these things. Well, what you pointed out was the regulation exists, and that makes it no different.
Here's the problem with that. The reason the regulation exists is because people have been convinced that the only money that there is dollars. So what I mean by that is, in order to buy Bitcoin right now, you have to give them money. You have to give them the dollars that they've created. And if you want to get cash out Bitcoin, you have to go and collect dollars that they've created, right? So this is the problem with Bitcoin right now. Now, just like when you hand me a $100 bill, Crow, if you gave me a $100 bill, I don't think to myself, oh, where do I go get $100 for this? I immediately recognize that the $100 bill itself is money. It is money. Bitcoin works the same way. If you send me Bitcoin and I recognize that you've sent me money, then I don't need to think about the next step of, oh, how do I go cash this out? How do I get money for my money? The problem is that right now, if I tried to pay my rent with Bitcoin, and I tell my landlord every month, hey, start accepting Bitcoin. And he always tells me, oh, there's one other guy that says the same thing. And, says maybe eventually. So right now, that's why there's that issue, is that if I want to pay for my rent, I can't, because he won't accept Bitcoin. So I have to then think, how do I go get money for this? And that's what they've regulated. Where this will all fall through, where this will all blow up in their faces, is if people ever start using it as money without the idea of, oh, there's dollars. I need to get dollars for this. I need to pay for this in dollars. Just like we work. If you go do you go do some work throughout the day, we know we get paid in money. Well, just change that and imagine that you go work and you get paid in Bitcoin. It is the money. And then you spend the money and you send the money, and it works like that. At that point, there is no regulation, and there can never be. So what they've done is convince people
that's not wholly true either, because the regulation exists outside the currency that's printed that we call fiat. For the purveyors of Bitcoin and other places, they have to register. That was one of the there's a big show on one of the PBSs about Bitcoin and about all the people who beefed up their machines to go mine for it, and everything that happened, all the people that got ruined because it is so volatile. People just lost their asses. So a few people made out very well, but what they did is they put it right into fiat, didn't they? My point being is that it is regulated. They had to go do all the applications. Was it New York or San Francisco? I forget. They had to go is it the FCC? Am I thinking of the right place? I don't even recall, because I wasn't paying that close attention.
FinCEN, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, so they all had to register with that. Meanwhile, they took out one of the big early purveyors, which was a card, a play card, like a Harry Potter play card. I can't remember the names of these places because I wasn't paying that attention, but they took that guy out. And he was the biggest purveyor at one point in the center of the whole Bitcoin upheaval. But the other thing is for Bitcoin to ever work, it has to go unregulated. It has to truly be the idea of decentralized peer-to-peer, where it's really just not really stoppable. But more than anything, everybody...
Let's comment on that real quick. So if it has to be unregulated, then in order to be unregulated, it would have to have nothing to do with our monetary system, correct? Because you can't have people buying things with money or collecting money in this country without registering as a money transmitting business. And at that point, it is regulated. So what I'm saying is, yes, the companies have had to sign up and get permission and do all those things. But that's because they're trying to marry the two, Bitcoin and the dollar. They're trying to let you buy Bitcoin with the dollar, and they're trying to give you dollars for the Bitcoin. What I'm saying is that doesn't need to be a part of the system. It is right now, but it won't be in 5 or 10 years. This is what I'm saying is that it's
See, there's another aspect to this that I wasn't going to bring up, but we did a white paper what was it, 3-4 weeks ago on the digital dollar that the central bank's going to be behind.
absolutely
Couple of the things put in there, the idea that you can't build a savings account easily, the idea that you can't transfer wealth to your children. These are the ideas being built into that type of crypto.
okay.
But
So
here's the other problem. You stated there's so much crypto in the world, right? So the amount of crypto, let's say it caught on like holy hell wildfire tomorrow, and every person in every country wanted in on Bitcoin tomorrow. So everybody's going to start using it. It's going to become more popular. Now you can use Bitcoin to buy a Coke at 7-Eleven because it's so popular and everyone's using it.
Mhm.
The central bank could knock that over in a day by simply creating a competing currency and flooding the market with it, or for that matter, playing the Bill Gates game, just handing out your product for free until you establish, and then doing the flip switch
Sure.
like Microsoft did.
But that would
The
decentralize
problem
system.
with all digital things in our world is one thing. I don't disagree with you. We're going there. Unless there's an act of God, we're in fact going there. Everything will be digital all the way if they can get it there. To Ready Player One, all the way if they can get it there. But it's all fugazi. It's all make-believe. There's no intrinsic value in any of it. And so as human beings, we seek things that have intrinsic value. Like I got to climb that mountain, and I need a pair of shoes to protect my feet. I'm at the top of that mountain. I need a coat because it has intrinsic value. At the top of that mountain, I've got to buy food, so I've got to have something of intrinsic value to barter for the food, whether it be money or my knife or whatever it may be. And that's the other problem.
So what does intrinsic value mean? What is your definition of that word?
It exists. You can hold it in your hand, and I don't have to argue with another human being that there's value there. Everybody automatically on the face of it recognizes there's worth, like a knife. Everybody understands what a knife is for. We don't argue whether it has a place in the world. Everybody knows if you got a knife, you can make things, you can cut things, you can eat a steak with it. You can do any number of things with a knife. Intrinsic value, or gold or silver, for that matter. Nobody has to be. It's not. No, it's not trust at all, because we're all using fiat right now that has zero intrinsic value.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying money had. You thought you said money was included in your intrinsic value, so that's why I was confused.
No, fiat currency has no intrinsic value. It's just an IOU that we know we can. There's so much trust in it that we know my IOU can be handed to you and you'll hand it to someone else. So nobody cares that it can't be cashed in for actual intrinsic value.
Right.
And you see, but this is all part of the game. In 70, what the hell is it, Jason? 2, 3, whenever the hell it was, they finally fully pulled us off the gold standard.
73, yeah.
They had this day in mind. You see, because a world that is trading for intrinsic value still has a worth that can't be, per se, completely fugazied out. There's nothing digital that will escape that. It can't be done. There is no intrinsic value. You can be convinced there's intrinsic value, but on the face of it, if you were left out in the wilderness with a frickin' PC, you would recognize the intrinsic value real quick. There is none. It's an imaginary bunch of electrons on the head of a pin. In other words, it is the establishment of living in a fantasy-based existence where we fake like things exist that really don't.
Well, one of the big things I want to tie this into eventually is the transhumanism thing, because I have very mixed feelings on it. I really like it in some regards, and I see a whole lot of dangers on the other side of it, which is why I wanted to have this discussion.
Let me just talk a couple things on real quick that Crow said, because
and I'd like to get some questions in too as well. So
I just want to, because it keeps addressing different things that I think have been handled by Bitcoin. But you said that whatever the coin is that the government comes out with, which I totally agree with, they will come out with one soon. You said some of the things that have been written into that is that there can be no savings, that it can be no passing on to your children, all these things, right?
That's their plan, yeah.
Correct. Okay, so with Bitcoin, all those things are possible as of today. I can create a wallet that nobody in the world will ever know that I own, that it even exists, and I can put money in there, and I can store that for my son, my grandson, whoever I want, and nobody can ever know. It's impossible to know that I own that. So it's just like a Swiss bank account as well. I mean, these are things that the government a long time ago got rid of. The idea that you can set up an offshore a bank account that's untrackable. Bitcoin allows that. So there's some things that now Bitcoin, one of the things that's a little iffy about it is that it is, since it's so open source, not open source, since it's so transparent, a lot of transactions or every transaction basically shows up on the blockchain. And if people don't know how to use it correctly, somebody can potentially see into your finances, right? So there is other coins that have come out like Monero and things like that that are privacy focused where nobody would ever be able to do that. But just going back to what I was saying about there's so many things set up in Bitcoin that once you understand how it works, it can't possibly be from some sort of a government agency.
It's not really about that though, Jeran. It is open source. There's one glaring problem that no one's going to answer. The problem is nobody knows who the hell created it. That problem is so freaking glaring that I can't overstate it. To have a car in the world, you know who made the car. You know what the color of the car is. You know how many doors it is, how many horsepower. It's legit. Someone made a car. Oh, there's the dude that made the car. What we have here is a whole new level of technology, which is going to be in basically the currency realm. If we want to give it a label, it's going to act as some form of money. Nobody knows who did it. And there was a lie out there floated with a name of a man who doesn't exist, who is supposedly Japanese. And I will restate, to the best of my knowledge, no one has seen the full source code. And I would ask another question. What allows Bitcoin to run? Is there a central server that's the magical Bitcoin central server?
No.
So how does Bitcoin run?
It's run like BitTorrent. Is you start out with one computer and then you have somebody else who joins, and now there's two. So now there's hundreds of millions of computers running. To knock out the system, you'd have to knock out every single computer.
Well, I don't really think it's like the idea of peer-to-peer. I don't think it could really be done unless the whole internet came down. The point is, it would be so simple for someone with resources to contend and overtake Bitcoin. For one thing, there's no security there. What's it take? You just said a new Bitcoin will be added in, what did you say, 40 years?
No, well, 10. I forgot what it is right now. I think 2.5 Bitcoin are released every 10 minutes. I think that's where they're at right now.
So what would happen if the central bank decided that every American citizen, now that we're going to crypto, since you were born in this country, if you can prove you're born in this country, it's like the Saudi thing. You get oil dividends. So they hand everyone 200,000 digital dollars for free.
Okay. Well, prices of everything.
And so with that, the infrastructure to get all this free money that's being handed out from the central bank, the infrastructure starts to build and everybody's in on it. I have no idea what percentage of Americans are actually holding and using Bitcoin regularly, but I'm guessing it's not that big a percentage. It would not be easy to flood it out in that way either, but that's not really the problem. The problem is nobody knows who made it. As far as I know, the original source code has never been fully divulged, and we know there was a lie proffered about a make-believe Japanese dude who made it.
Well, it wasn't a lie. It's a pseudonym, so it's done on purpose. And
at first, if you remember, they were acting like that was a dude, and then they had to come out and say, "Well, it wasn't a dude. It was this other sneaky hacker thing. Nothing going on here."
Right, and again, it could be a group of people, we don't know who it was, but you can see the paper. You can see that's what I'm confused about. And can you find one link or any kind of reference to 15% of the code? Because that doesn't make any sense. Then the whole thing is out the window. If you've only seen 15% of the code, you wouldn't know. Maybe it's coded that.
Well, there has to be some form of security. If it's completely open source, someone will figure out how to hack it, and they'll just put a million. Yeah,
it's impossible to hack. This is why this is what I struggle with. Is I try and do videos and explain to people that once you understand that it's only done on simple mathematics and impossibilities of anybody guess. It's an open system, meaning you're right. Everybody can see the code and they know what the code is. That's why people try and hack wallets, is because the code is out.
They can see the code that allows it to operate.
That is the code that allows it to operate. And then there's a code. So what you're saying when you say 15%, then you're saying, oh, well, somebody could have coded that on January 9th, 2050, to transfer all Bitcoin from every wallet into this new person's wallet. Well, that would be possible if the code wasn't open.
Yeah, I guess I see where you're going. That's not actually what I'm insinuating. What I'm insinuating is things that are above board and you know what you need to know about them. And when it comes to computer code, that's the worst of all, because people who know what's going on still get screwed over all the time because code is code. But I'll try to find it and I'll mail it to you. I was talking with guys in the gold and silver markets who are eyeing the idea of crypto. They won't touch fiat currency anymore. They accurately predicted that it would die in 2020, and they are stating vehemently, whether or not that ends up being true, that the reset will come in 21. But they're all looking at it, and we were looking at all these things. Jason knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The guy's super well connected. And I don't know as much about it as I would, other than to know that the digital world is the downfall of humanity because it's fake. Because it's not a tree, because it's not an apple, because it's not your girlfriend, because it's not that real child that you had, it's not that living dog that you trained, it's not that house that you built with your own hands. It's imaginary. It's electrons on the head of a pin.
So what is the intrinsic value of gold then? If I have a gold coin, tell me what's different about gold than what you see with Bitcoin. Because with gold, there's not
one thing. The first obvious thing is Bitcoin doesn't exist.
Well, it does exist. It exists.
No, it doesn't
in every
exist.
computer.
Show it to me. Hand me a Bitcoin, would you?
That's not what Bitcoin is. It's a file, right?
It's an idea. It's an electron balanced on the head of a pin. It doesn't exist. It's a metaphor for reality.
I don't really know what you mean by that. If there's only 21 million of a certain file and you pass it out to a bunch of people and everybody has that file, are you saying the file is imaginary or is the file real?
The file is real as long as you have a computer to view it. When the computer goes away, the existence of the file is proven as no longer here.
Sure, that's true. So if every computer disappeared, then Bitcoin would disappear. I don't disagree with that. As far as saying...
Well, it's already disappeared. It's just been rendered in a way with characters that aren't even the Bitcoin itself. You're looking at a 5 that is not the Bitcoin. It's a representation of the supposed worth of the Bitcoin. So even the value is a metaphor for the thing that doesn't exist.
Well, here's a fair statement we can make about it, though. Anything has value if people accept it as having value. That could be a maple leaf, a pebble from a certain beach. Doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying. So if we all got together and agreed, hey, we're going to make these 21 million files. And the crazy thing about files is when a file is duplicated, it's always perfect. Or usually, I mean, if you make a text file and I send it to you and you send it to Crow and he sends it to somebody, the file doesn't change. It is the same file. And if we decided, hey, these files have this certain value, then we could transact with them. Now, other people aren't going to want to get involved because they're not going to assign the same value to it that we may have from the start. With Bitcoin, it started out with no value. That's the thing. For the first year, and this is why this Satoshi guy or whoever that is has 1 million coins sitting in wallets that will never be touched, is because in the first year, all these things had to happen without it being worth anything. So
wait a minute. You just said the Satoshi guy has 1 million coins in a wallet, and we know Satoshi doesn't exist?
Well, it's multiple wallets, yes, but he has about 1 million.
So who owns the multiple wallets?
Nobody knows.
That's another glaring problem.
Well, Jeran, what does that mean? You mean that there are whole Bitcoins that haven't been released yet, but they've been mined and they're being held? Like, what does that actually mean?
So Bitcoin is released at a certain rate, all coded. You can look at the code. You can see the rate that they get released. Right now we're at 2.5 Bitcoins released every 10 minutes.
Who does the release, or how is the release achieved?
It's coded. It's all coded.
So it's code triggered release written into the initial. Okay.
Correct. So every 4 years they have what's called a halvening, which means at that mark, which we just had the last one in March of 2020. I'm sorry, in May. When that halvening happened, it was releasing 5 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. Now at the halvening of 2020 in May, it went down to 2.5 every 10 minutes. Now in 4 years from now, in 2024, or in 4 years from then, it's going to go down to whatever half of 1.25 Bitcoins every 10 minutes, and it will keep doing that halvening all the way until 2140, when it will release the last little bit of the total of 21 million. So basically, you started it out. They said 21 million. At the beginning, it was releasing a ton, right? Because it's been happening every 4 years. So in 2009.
But nobody knows the server or the computer or the iPad or the iPod Nobody knows where that wallet sits that's holding those millions of coins?
Where the wallet sits? No, because the wallet is just an address. It doesn't actually sit anywhere.
Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Is it assumed that a single individual somewhere in the world controls that?
It is assumed that those coins will never be released. They are lost. That is the assumption right now in the community, because they've never been touched. So what happened is to get this started, imagine we were going to get this started, and it was just between me and you, Crow. I set up my computer, you set up yours, and I said, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this code that's going to release these coins at a certain rate, and you're going to collect them, and then we're going to trade back and forth and see if it works. So we do that, and it trades back and forth. And since this thing is releasing coins at a certain rate, and somebody needs to mine the transactions, somebody else's computer, one of their friends, said, I'll be the miner, and they kind of played this little game between them. So for the first year, you had basically coins being released to these guys' wallets, the ones who owned it from the beginning or whoever started it. And then after it got going and people started picking it up, they started putting it in forums and cryptography forums and telling people about it. And people looked at the code and said, this is brilliant. Oh, I'll be a miner, even though nothing had any value. And then after time, so say by 2010 or whatever, all of a sudden people started assigning value to it, meaning that the coins that had already been released, somebody said, hey, I'm willing to give you a penny for one of those. All right, here you go. Hey, I'm willing to give you 10 cents for one of those. Okay, here you go. So they started to trade them, and the value goes up as people see the value of the system that's running. That is the value behind Bitcoin. Is it is the code behind it. The system that's running tells you exactly when these coins are going to be released, exactly how you can mine the transactions, and how every transaction can go into a ledger, and it's public, and it can never be altered, and it can never be changed. There is nobody who can attack. There's something called a 51% attack. It's the only possible way that Bitcoin could be attacked. In order to do that, what it means is that 51% of the miners would need to join together, all get together and say, hey, let's do it this way instead. Let's change by doing this, or let's make all the transactions go to us instead of everybody else. The problem with anybody ever doing that is it would immediately destroy the value. Well, the miners are the ones making money from mining transactions. So why would they get together, all of them? Remember, 51%, there's miners in every country. There's millions of miners. Why would half of them decide, let's get together and destroy the value? They've been collecting Bitcoin for 10 years. Why would they want to now destroy their own value? So this is the protection of the system. This is the trust of the system.
Well, let me put it to you this way. And from my point of view, and I think you've gleaned my point of view as we've been going here. When we get to crypto, it will be the biggest lot. When we do almost all our transactions in this world using crypto, humanity will have lost more freedom than at any other time that I'm aware of. That's what I predict. But let me ask you this question.
Well, I would agree with you. If it's any kind of a centralized system, absolutely. If anything this government puts out,
how can it not be? You'll never convince me that the central bank was so freaking dim-witted they couldn't possibly understand there was this new digital.
It's not that. It's that they've tried since 1970 to create digital money, and they've never been able to, because it was at the time an impossible task. Nobody could come up with a way. How do you make it not counterfeitable? Thing about files, just like I talked about earlier, sending a file between all of us. The thing about a file is anybody can grab it.
Now everybody knows, though, right?
Could I interject something here?
Yeah, real quick.
Hold on. Let me ask my question real quick. So, Jeran, does it make a difference in our world if I tell you that the world is spinning and that space is a vacuum? Does it make any damn difference if you choose to take that point of view?
I think so, yeah.
Why?
Because of the kind of person it creates.
Well, what you're basically pointing out is intrinsic value, which is based on truth. The reason it matters is because it's a lie, and it's a provable lie, which means we're existing in a fantasy-based reality, which means that every decision, every conversation, every thought based on that inaccuracy is worthless. It has no intrinsic value, even if people think it does, because it's not true.
So are you saying...
So that argument that I've just laid in front of you is the exact same thing you asked me when what was the difference between the intrinsic value of Bitcoin and gold is the same argument as the world is spinning or the world is flat.
I don't know what you mean.
It's identical.
Okay, but how is Bitcoin a lie? That's where I'm confused still. So explain to me how.
Because it doesn't exist.
The code exists.
Right. Can I hand me that code?
Sure,
I think this is gonna be whether you want to use it or not, and I don't think there's gonna be any resolution here. But let's give Wayne and Baldini a chance to say something. We've been on for an hour and they haven't been able to say a peep yet.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. But I have questions, and I mean, I think I'm listening to both sides, and I think I'm following along. I do have some questions, and I'll ask this to Jeran. Perhaps you can better explain this to me. The difference. So we have a variety now. Bitcoin, of course, is not the only cryptocurrency that's currently available. We have it was one of the first, obviously. But there's like Litecoin, Namecoin, Peercoin, Dogecoin that Elon's into now, as well as the major thing, Primecoin, Ripple, Tether, whatever, right? There's dozens of them. Most of them seem to be compiled in C++ or C# using script or SHA or one of these hash algorithms as a security device. So what's the intrinsic difference between these different cryptocurrencies?
Just that people who were able to look at the Bitcoin code said that they would do different things with it. They would change certain.
So are
parts.
those basically based on the same code? They just kind of repurposed them and had different features to them. Is that what I'm getting?
Correct. Yeah. Basically, nobody before Bitcoin had ever come up with a way to stop double spending, a way to stop counterfeiting. Nobody had ever created a digital currency. They had tried from the 70s. When Bitcoin
so
came
all the others then are basically, it's kind of a knockoff, but they all kind of work the same, but with different features. Is that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they work the same. Some are proof of work, some are proof of stake. There's different ways of mining. There's also different amounts, right? So Bitcoin has 21 million. Mm-hmm. Things like Ethereum have no cap, meaning that at any time somebody could add coins to that system.
Right. So a quantitative easing in a digital sense then.
Correct.
Okay. Yes. All right. So and part of what makes, if I got this right, part of what makes Bitcoin at least attractive is that it does have a cap on it. There's a limited there's supposed to be anyway a limited number that will ever be, and that gives it at least some perceived value there. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. 21 million cap, which is completely opposite of what the dollar is, which if you read the white paper was the intent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Okay, I got that part. Okay, so when you were talking about the beginning, whenever you were talking about how you were given Bitcoin to write these articles, it reminded me very much about 401k, right? You're investing in something, and the better idea, right, is to put it away and forget that it's there, right? Those should be long-term investments, right? That you're not, unless you're into day trading or arbitrage or something like that. It's the best way to manage that is to figure out your portfolio, go long. Right. You can go more volatile when you're younger, but especially as you get older, you want something a little bit, a little bit more stable. But it seems to me like that's pretty much the story that you're telling, right? It's sort of like if I would just flip that story and used 401k instead of Bitcoin, it's like, hey, I worked for a company that gave me stock options. It split, and I went, fuck, I'm taking the money. Right. I mean, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. At the time, I saw it as a different thing than I see it now.
Sure.
You could send for pennies. There was like a penny transaction fee. Today's the transaction fees are much higher. So back then, I saw it as something where, hey, people can make YouTube videos, and everybody who watches a video can donate a penny, and we all could do that from our wallets, and it wouldn't cost anybody anything. Well, those things aren't possible with Bitcoin today. So some things have changed from the way I looked at it then versus now. Then I saw it as like a money system. Now I see it more as a hold of value.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is again, and I think some of this has to do. Well, I guess my view on this would be again, so from the story that you told, and from what I gather here, it is a bit like stocks, right? Something like that. In other words, the best scenario or the best plan, at least from what I hear you tell, is to buy and hold, right? Not try to trade them, because it's going to. The idea is that it increases in value over time, and that you want to hang on to that, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
It's like a stock, but you're buying stock in the system.
Yeah, right. Okay, but it has a certain level of volatility, and as I think what Crow is kind of pointing out there is that any system like that, whether it's a stock, for example, it has the stock has value not only in the intrinsic value or the asset value of the company, but most of it has to do with the perceived value, right? How much you can leverage your brand name, whether it really comes down to trust, right? I mean, there's certainly the trust is in fiat currency. The trust is that if I take take $1 down to 7-Eleven and want to buy a ding dong, they'll give it to me, provided I have enough of those dollars. Right. I mean, ultimately, I think everything comes down to trust, whether we have trust in that thing or not. For example, I mean, let's go back to the 401k idea. My kids are close to 30 now. I would not advise either of them not to invest in 401k. Right? They're young, and it's a good idea to do that at my age, at 54, and for having changed jobs numerous times and leaving corporate.
Have them save money, save dollars.
No, investing in 401k. If you have a matching option at a job, right, and they give you a 401k option, take it. Right, it's free money, but it's still volatile. Right, it's still based in stocks. It's not an object. Right. I mean, and we can see that even dollars, it's not an object. So a dollar today is not the same as it was even in 2000, or certainly not in the 1970s. It's a perceived value. But again, I would never advise my kids not to do something like that. I guess what I'm saying is, for me at my age, because having had to cash out of the 401k for various reasons at different times, not be something the way I perceive things now. Like I'm not interested in I don't know, setting up a financial, empire. My investment at this point is in relationships, right? That's of more value to me. But I think one of the things that I see, and certainly the conversation that I see you and Crow having, right, is that I think where Crow is coming from is that his value is in the natural world, and that anything that is not a physical, tangible thing has less value to him. And so that's his perception, has less value, right? There's no intrinsic value, can't hold it in his hand. And I mean, certainly anybody who's worked in the recording industry since digital recording would say, in terms of does something digital exist? Well, we always say that if it's not in at least 3 places, it doesn't truly exist, because there's nobody I know in this industry who hasn't lost recordings or have them go south somewhere. It's happened to everyone at some point or another.
They can print you the source code and give you some paper.
There you go. And
does it exist?
Yeah, Pro Tools would be happy to give you a new 888 or whatever. Right?
I want to ask you a question I don't know though, Baldini. What do you attribute the volatility to, Jeran? Why is it so volatile? I mean, right now my perception is that clever people, some of them are about to get very rich on Bitcoin. I suspect that a lot of people are going to go broke that aren't so clever, and I truly suspect that it's about to be manipulated, which the Bitcoin people will tell you is not possible. But what do you attribute the volatility?
When Bitcoin people tell you it's not possible, and you're just making the claim that it can be. So what would be your evidence of that? You haven't read the code. It's impossible that you just said people who buy it now will go broke. How is that possible? How would somebody go broke?
Because they'll do what you're saying, and they'll invest a lot of money in a thing that's volatile.
Okay, so volatile to me means that you could, either lose or gain, at any time it can go up or down. Okay, so I get what you're saying there. But if you look at it, like I just said, not as a what's going to happen next week or next month. If, just like Baldini talked about going in and paying with $1 and paying with $10 or whatever. The problem with $10 is that in the future, a year from now, the $10 will be worth less. It's a guarantee. It's happened throughout all of history. There's no way it's going to do the opposite. With Bitcoin, the opposite is true. A year from now, Bitcoin will be worth more than it is today. Now, if you're talking about a month from today,
that's speculative a little bit.
Well, it's never okay. Well, if
it's based on past experience. I get it. I have to interject.
But But wait a minute. What is the volatility, Jeran? What causes the volatility?
Okay, so the price of Bitcoin, the price that we see today, right? Whatever it is, 44,582. The way that they get that price is that's the lowest price that somebody's willing to sell for right now. That's basically how you get the price. So it means, imagine that right now I could go to an exchange and I could put a sell order for $100,000 on. Okay. So my name, my little address, my Bitcoins would be there. They'd be ready for somebody to buy for 100,000. Now, again, nobody's going to buy that right now because there's people that are on the exchange for lower amounts than me, going all the way down into whatever the price is right now, 44,000.
So what you're saying is what the market will bear. It's true what the market will bear.
Correct. So that's the price of Bitcoin. So why is it so volatile? Because let's say tomorrow the U.S. government came out and said, that's it, Bitcoin's illegal. Well, immediately the price is going to drop by half. The reason for that is because everybody who's holding that right now, like let's say, for instance, I just said I would put up my sell order for 100,000. Maybe I'm a very timid, nervous person about the government. So the second they say it's illegal, I'm going to change my sell order to 20,000 because I just want to get out. I just want money for it. And that would drop the price to 20,000. So
You just made my argument, by the way, with that example. But go ahead,
guys. If I can, real quick, I hate to do this. I'm not feeling well, so I'd like to throw out a couple of things, and I'm gonna have to bail because I'm not feeling well. But I think that here's would be my take on kind of the whole thing, right? Is that I would never. It's never my position to tell anybody what to do or not to do. And I think if there's an opportunity for people to make money and that's what they want to do, invest it. Choose wisely and do what you want to do. I think for many people who do not have trust in the system, I think part of the thing, I think the point's being made is that anything that's not tangible physical thing is based on perceived value and trust in the system. And if the system changes, so if I invest in Bitcoin and I got $2 million and then tomorrow everything changes and the power goes out, right? Or the government changes and all of a sudden everything's crazy. That the value, everything changes, right? The lay of the land is different. And so for me, I'm not into investing in this system anymore, right? I'm trying to get as much out of the system as I can.
Power goes out
and withdraw.
What are you going to do?
And so I'm not trying to again make an argument for or against. I'm saying from my perspective,
right,
I see that everything is everything that's not physical. And that includes all money. Or stocks or bonds.
You're saying things about Bitcoin, but then you're not remembering that the same would be true for money.
I am absolutely. Okay. I'm saying the same is true for all of it, right? Okay. So it's not just Bitcoin. It's not just cryptocurrency. It's not any of. I'm just saying the same as stocks, right? That's my point. Is that anything that's not physically tangible has the possibility of going away. Right. Correct. And so, and whether that is stamp, I have a stamp collection, right? It's perceived value. It could burn, anything, right? So that's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, from my perspective, Bitcoin is not really that much different than stocks or bonds or money, right? If you want to invest in that, and that's where you want to put value, feel free. It's not going to me to say it. It's from my perspective, what I see is valuable at this point, especially when I look at the world, is people and relationships. And that's where my focus is going to be from here on in. And everything that I have in terms of tangible physical value assets, I'm going to throw it in those relationships and people and trying to make a sustainable way to live, hedging my bets against the fact that probably none of it is going to be the same way. Now, whether that's shit hits the fan or just different, my bet is that things are going to be substantially different. We've seen things change over the last 5 years and certainly the last 24 months in ways that over 54 years I haven't previously. So my bet is that it will be very different. And my view is I'm not willing to invest in stocks or bonds or any financial currency that doesn't have, again, the value to me. And again, and this is just my view. I'm not dissing Bitcoin right? I'm just, to me, it's like, hey, it's a stock and it's a stock that's going up. So if you want to make money that way, good. But even if you get the money and then the money changes, then right, I just as I get older, right, the more tangible, valuable assets are relationships, and I can't eat Bitcoin, right? I need water and I need food, and I want relationships. And so I guess that's my just encouragement for folks is to figure out what's of value to you, and then invest heavily in whatever's of value to you. And with that, I hate to do it and run, but I'm afraid I was going to throw up at any minute. I'm so sorry. I'm not well. So thanks so much for having me, Jeran. It's good talking to you. Sorry, we haven't got a chance to talk before. Love watching your shows and stuff. You're a bright guy, and hope we get a chance to talk again. Guys, I'm so sorry. I have to leave. Take this, guys. Bye.
Good night, buddy.
All right. So yeah, I mean he's saying a lot of good points, but the same thing is true for money. That the same thing. That the internet could go down, and if you think you're going to be able to get your money out of the bank, you're not wrong. The way it works. Right. So you'd have a problem there. So yeah, Bitcoin has the same problem as.
I was going to point out a thing though, too, Jeran. Even if it was completely the idea of peer-to-peer, all right. So nobody can, unless they take everybody down, they're not taking it down, and it was truly operating in that way. I would say that 99.9% of us get on the internet using an on-ramp called an ISP. Mm-hmm. That's been proven to be the downfall of anything digital. Right now, if I publish something that they're intent on censoring, and I'm on social media, easy cheesy, they censor me. When I pull it over to my site and it's my private server, it's a whole other ballgame. Not so easy for them. So what they do is they don't come after me. They threaten the ISP because they tell the ISP, we'll take you offline if you allow this to continue. It's dangerous. It's whatever the hell they want to call it. And that, too, will be another problem of any digital currency, because to use it, you will have to get on the internet. And as we go further into the digital age, pretty soon, I'm guessing before too long, you will need your driver's license, your passport to get online. You will have
Or
to
your
be
vaccine.
known quantity. Yeah, it's a similar thing. You will have to prove your bona fides, and you'll get on and you'll go look at your YouTube, but you will do so as your actual real self, as if it were a thumbprint. At that point, every transaction you ever make with any kind of digital currency will first be openly on the record for anyone who wants to go find out. Secondarily, if you're doing things that people don't appreciate, they can shut you down as easy as sneezing, even if they have to do it through the ISP. And these are just some of the problems that I foresee. But when you were telling me why it's volatile, you said a very important thing. If the United States outlawed Bitcoin tomorrow, there would be a violent reaction. And this is the problem with anything that's regulated. And it is regulated. All the big players had to go get their licenses.
If they did announce that it was illegal, which they wouldn't do, and I can give reasons why they wouldn't do that, but if they did, because remember, they do have it regulated, but they know who's cashing out and buying in. So why would they make something illegal? When you make something illegal, what does that do? It drives it underground. If you drive it underground, you no longer have the insight into it that you had before. But let's say they did do that. The price would drop to $20,000 tomorrow. And then everybody who has been watching Bitcoin and saw it go down to 20 would start buying, and it would drive the price right back up. So would it take a little while? Would it take a couple months till we saw it start making some gains? Probably. And I think that the value would be increased. The value of things that are illegal are more than if they were legal. Just like if crack was free, if crack was legal, it would be cheaper to buy at grocery stores and to buy at your liquor store, but it's more expensive because it's illegal. And since it's illegal, people have to do shady things to get it. And when people have to do shady things to get it, that price transfers to the buyer, just like with anything else. So just like guns, if are cheaper if they weren't regulated. The fact that they're regulated causes the price to go up. All these businesses have to have all these licenses. That kind of makes it more expensive with that. So with Bitcoin, it's the same kind of idea. And if they drove it underground, the price, I think, would rebound. I think it would be, back where it was in a matter of time. I
agree. If they left it alone, I think you're absolutely right, because it's being market driven per se. It's what the people want. Basically, it's reacting to what the market is about. Mm-hmm. True market-driven market. But here's the real problem. If we added up right now what percentage of world commerce is happening in Bitcoin, it'd be a pretty low percentage, right?
Probably, yeah. I think it's a couple percent.
Right. So we have central banks in this world. The problem is we don't have just a couple of them. They're in every nation that is so-called first world, third world, second world, every one of them. When the pandemic started, they began flooding dollars into 126 other central banks, just printing the paper. So that would be inflation gone insane in a normal world, which I assume we'll feel at some point in the future. Point is, those central banks have been around for however long they've been around, and they've controlled world commerce. That is the elephant in the room. There is no way in hell some clever blockchain, some clever made-up Satoshi dude is going to come up with a peer-to-peer or any other method that uses the internet that they control, and they do control it because corporations control it, and money controls corporations, and central banks control everything. They saw it coming. They knew it. They could stop it at any time they want, simply because they have the resources to do it.
So why does the darknet exist? You don't think I can go there now and buy cocaine and buy?
Because I don't think it matters enough. There are very few people who can deal with it. It's a numbers game. If it became mainstream tomorrow, you'd see a reaction to start to change that. Might not happen overnight, but it's always a numbers game. How many people do you know that know how to access the dark web safely without walking away with a infected computer or worse, or get scammed?
Yeah, no, many.
I think I know two who can do it safely. As a matter of fact, I've got a degree in internet technology, and as I start looking at it, I realize I'm over my head because I don't pay attention to it all the time. So what the hell? I don't need cocaine. So what do I need the dark web? I'm not interested in some weird porn with donkeys.
No.
What's there for me? My point is it's not that many people, but I guarantee you the other thing about the dark web is because it's monitored more than people will ever understand. And Jason can tell you how I know that's true. So basically they're allowing it to happen because they can look anywhere they want for the most part.
Right. And the same thing might be true with Bitcoin. I mean, I never said that that's not true, that they can't do some sort of a deep forensics into it. That is true. They can do that. But as far as it being, you said the chances that somebody wrote a code that they have nothing to do with, I would disagree with you on that. I mean, you can write a code, right? You can write code for a computer program. You can do it. I can do it. We're just not talented in that way. If somebody who is talented, they've already written code. Every website you're on is a code written by some person. And so with Bitcoin is obviously a person, whether we want to call that person Satoshi or the NSA or Obama, it doesn't matter who that person is.
Why don't we call him the mystery agent or the mystery agents or maybe the central bank? Who knows?
Yes, the mystery agent. Let's call him that.
Okay.
So what they did by creating Bitcoin is they had all these coins take off of it. All these people are now able to put value into these crypto digital coins, and they're able to store them in various wallets that the government has no idea of knowing who has what. None. So they can try and do deep forensics and things like that, but there's ways to get around that. Many people know how to get around that. So what I'm saying is if they developed it, then they did a pretty bad job of releasing it to the public and then letting people get rich off of it, which is what I said I could have done. I could have made $2 million off of it.
Very few, though. Very, very few. It's always a numbers game.
Well, just like I said, I mean, the people who bought in at $1 sold at $5, right? And the people who bought in at $5 sold at $15. And the people who sold at 15, I don't think there's a lot of people who bought in at $1 and are sitting there today like, I wonder if I should cash out today or if I should wait and see if it goes up higher. No, that'd be insane. They already took their profits and are pretty happy with a $1 investment turning into $45,000, right? So they've already done that, and people kind of go along.
That's a bit like, in my way of reckoning, that's a bit like the cheese being carefully placed on the mousetrap. That's what that appears to be to me.
You mean that there's a profit for people who get on?
Yeah, look, this guy invested 10 cents and now, everything he bought for 10 cents is worth $100 or $100,000. And by the way, he lives in Beverly Hills now. That's bait.
So here's the problem. I think that the issue comes from always basing it off of what you can get for the dollar. Imagine that in 100 years ago, so 1920, that the United States government said, hey, here's $21 million, okay? That's all we're ever going to print. That's all we're ever going to make. This is all you get. 21 million. We're going to pass it out to everybody on this kind of release schedule. It's going to be released at this, this amount each day or this amount each 10 minutes, whatever. And at the end of those 100 years, so let's say we just hit the 100-year mark, boom, the last of the $21 million has been released. So there's $21 million. Now we know a couple things, that a lot of that money got lost, right? So maybe a house burnt down, maybe a bank burnt down. So we know that some of that 21 million is gone, but we know that there can't be more than that. Now think of what the value of $1 would be today. The value would be extremely high because there's only 21 million of a dollar, and yet there's 350 million people in the United States. So you can start to see where we wouldn't have been able to have just a penny, right? It wouldn't be a penny being the lowest amount. We would have to have many, many decimal points to the right, multiple ones where 0.0000001 cent might be worth a loaf of bread today, might be worth going to get some gas, whatever. And that's how the value of money should work. So we shouldn't be surprised, just like if somebody said, well, what's this dollar worth in 1940? And then in 1945, it's worth more. It's because here's the problem I'm saying. You didn't look at it and say, oh, the dollar was worth this much in 1940 and this much in 1945. It all comes down to what you can get with it, not what its value is.
I can offer this, Jeran, and I know I cut off Wayne a while ago, and I'll shut up here in a minute. There's a book called A Nation of Counterfeiters. It was written by Stephen Mims. Mm-hmm. That's Stephen with a PH. His last name is M-I-H-M. A Nation of Counterfeiters. There was a dude after the great crash in 29 that was engineered by the central banks that we all now know, when we were about to become enemy combatants in 33 on the tail of that due to the debt they created. Mm-hmm. There was a guy who, I think it was Chicago University, one of the big universities, who had an ironclad, provably true way to fix the economies so that money would never inflate and never devalue again. In other words, his system that he designed and rolled out to the government, which they quickly rolled up and smoked and hid and act like it never existed, would a penny today would be a penny in 1,000 years if the same monetary system. That is an approvable system because it mimics nature. And because nature is all there is that's real here, as close to real as we can get in this illusion. And even nature is an illusion when it comes down to it. But that's the other problem. If you're talking about volatility, if you're talking about devaluation or inflation, you haven't won anything. That's what we do now in that casino that we call the stock market. And all our dollars, which when I was young and it was still backed by gold, they'd announce, oh, it's worth 38 cents now. Oh, it's worth a quarter now. That was the game we played. So this is all a manipulation. And the other thing I would point out is if you have a set number of coins and 100 billion people want to get in on the game, that gets so fractional as to be almost unwieldy, doesn't it?
No, that's what Bitcoin is right now. I mean, you can do 0.08 decimal points to the right now. They could always add more. It's at 0.00000001. It's called a Satoshi, and it's not worth much today. It's not worth anything at all. It's let me see what the lowest amount of Bitcoin is worth. It's probably so 0.00000001. So the lowest amount is about 4/1000ths of a penny right now. So 0.0004 cents US dollar. That's the lowest amount that there currently is.
Gives fractional reserve banking a new name.
Well, it's completely different than that.
I know. I'm making a joke, but Wayne, you were going to say something once upon a time before I start running my gums.
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick questions. First one being, whatever happened to BitTorrent? Does anybody know?
Yeah, it's still around. It's got a coin now that's based off of it. There's a BitTorrent coin. They've been doing things in the crypto world as well.
Okay. Does anybody use BitTorrent currently that you know? Is it actually still a thing, like as far as doing music downloads and things like that?
It's a peer-to-peer protocol, right? People use it all the time.
Still to this day, I haven't seen BitTorrent around in ages. I even forgot that it existed until you mentioned it just now. So
I think it's the same maybe as what you're thinking of. It's not, maybe they've repurposed, if that's what if that's what you're talking about. They now have like they're more in the crypto space than they are in the file sharing, because that would make sense, right? I mean, things like music, sharing music and stuff is going away, obviously, with Spotify and Apple Music. That's the way things are going. So they got out of that kind of thing. And now they're basically in crypto, but it's because they base it off of a peer-to-peer file sharing system. So you can actually still use BitTorrent to store your files. And I think you can charge people that coin. You can make that coin. It's kind of like a whole thing. But you can still download the program to your computer, I think.
Okay. So here's my next question then.
Yeah.
If BitTorrent has moved on to doing something different, don't you think Bitcoin is eventually going to do the same thing? And the other problem I have with this whole issue is I hear a lot of if and then going on. Like, if everybody adopts this system worldwide, this Bitcoin as the standard one world currency, which has been a failed thing to this point now.
Yeah, nobody said that. So nobody said the world accepts it as the monetary.
Well, in order for it to actually work in the way that we would need it to work in order to have the decentralization, it would have to work in that way. Everybody universally would have to adopt this system as their only form or primary form of currency, and I don't see that happening.
So you can't go to China and spend $1. So what do you mean?
Well, right. That's precisely my point. You could probably go to China and maybe spend a Bitcoin, but the places in China where you could spend a Bitcoin are probably very limited. It's the same kind of thing. My point being is we're basing the value of the Bitcoin to the dollar. I don't invest. I don't buy dollars.
Good.
Right. But I do buy Bitcoins.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. You don't buy the dollar because that is actually the unit of currency that's been adopted and accepted.
Buy the dollar. You do buy the dollar with your blood, sweat, and tears. Absolutely.
Well, see, that's the thing. Now, the Bitcoin, in order to achieve the model that they're looking for with it, would have to become the new dollar. Okay, and that is a
Why does that?
lofty ambition.
What do you mean by that? Why does it have to become? So right now, I can go get a job and I can get paid in Bitcoin, and they can pay me in Bitcoin, and I can hold it. And when I need to spend it, I can send it to somebody to buy something. So what difference does it make whether it places the dollar?
Yeah,
Well, the
I
thing
would
is-
actually say for Bitcoin to hold a place of value in my mind at all, it needs to remain a bit underground and not mainstream. I don't think it can mainstream. I think if it started to, it would just get clubbed like a baby
That's
seal.
my whole point, actually, is if it becomes mainstream, then it's going to start to see some issues arise with it. The first of which is the obvious one. Okay, if this is done on a blockchain utility, no information could really be lost in that. So
Correct.
therefore, a black market cannot exist, and it is in the interests of the powers that be in this world to maintain a black market. So I can't see it really becoming a primary form of currency because of that reasoning. For one thing, and for another thing, like I said, it's a mindset that needs to be changed worldwide for people to accept this as the new universal dollar or the new universal currency
Many people
worldwide.
have. Many people have, right? For instance, Dave Weiss lost a bet to me, and he paid me $200 in Bitcoin. So at that point, him and I made a bet. He paid me in Bitcoin. The bet has now been solved or completed, and no money was transmitted. No dollars were ever used. No money was even talked about. So at that point, it is money. We made a $200 bet. He paid me. What is wrong with that system?
But here's the problem. Does it really have intrinsic value? Like Crow said, if you go down to your local 7-Eleven, can you buy a Coke and a bag of chips with Bitcoin?
Easily.
I would say most in the area of the country I'm in, I don't see people accepting Bitcoin anywhere. It's not a regular form
Correct.
of transaction. In order to actually buy something with it, first you have to convert it to dollars.
Yes.
And that's my whole point.
That would be true. Yeah, that would be true.
Yeah,
And
you would
that's
have
what
to revamp the entire monetary system to
No,
make
you
it
need to
work.
revamp
And
it.
that's a tall order.
You
And
need
the
to-
only ones capable of doing that would be central banks.
Yeah.
So therefore, I see this as being something that's going to be hijacked at some point by the central banks. And we've actually looked at the documentation of that. They do plan on putting out their own digital currency. And there are different ways
So
that
that
they
has
can
nothing to do
combat
with
the
Bitcoin. Them creating their own digital currency has nothing to do with Bitcoin. What they're saying is they've seen the popularity of it, and they've learned how you can actually keep digital coins safe. You've learned how to not allow double spend. You've learned how to not allow hacking. You've learned how to not allow brute force attacks. So
Okay,
that's why they're going
How
to,
exactly do they prevent hacking of this?
because it's impossible. So I've done a whole show on private
How
keys.
is it impossible? I mean,
It
I'm
act- it
asking
act-
for my
it
own
actually
lack
is.
of knowledge on it.
Okay,
How
so
is it
is.
impossible?
Let me
to
explain
hack?
to you. Let me explain to you. The amount of, so you need a private key in order to spend money that exists in a wallet, okay? And the private key, the amount of private keys is 2 to the 256, okay? So that number is 115 undecillion, okay? It's an unheard of amount. One way to describe it, or that I've had it described to me, which might make a little sense to you, is that if you think of the amount of grains of sand that they say is on Earth, now we don't have to agree with that number, just think of that, because they say it's 2 to the 56 or 2 to the 54, whatever. That's the amount of grains of sand that they say is on Earth. They did some study. Okay, let's say we believe that. So the amount of private keys that exist is 2 to the 256. And what you're talking about there is, if on every grain of sand on Earth, now picture that on every one of those grains of sand was 7.7 billion people. Okay. So on every single grain of sand is 7.7 billion people. Now imagine that you hide your money with one person. Okay. So one person out of all the grains of sand on Earth, and on every grain of sand is 7.7 billion. And then I told you, here, go get a computer that can hack and find where my money is hidden. Hopefully you would realize it's impossible. That even computers running 4 billion hashes per second can't possibly do that in a trillion years. And it's not cost effective for them to even try, because let's say they do break into a wallet, chances are that wallet has zero in. Maybe the computer spent months and months and months and months and months and years and years and years trying to break these private keys, and then all of a sudden they got one and there's nothing in it. So there's not a monetary reason for somebody to hack. And the way that the hashing goes, the way that the algorithm is drawn, is it only goes one way. From a private key, you can get a public key, and from a public key, you can get an address, but you can never go the opposite way. It's done cryptographically. So meaning we know people's addresses. You can go to my donation page on my site and see my address, and you can find addresses that have, like the ones I talked about earlier, that have the 100,000 or a million coins in them. Well, just because you know that address, it's impossible to go the other direction. You cannot hack the address. The address is just a shortened thing. It doesn't go through SHA-256. It doesn't go through the intrinsic curve math, all that stuff. So you can't go backwards. So what that does is it makes it, in order to get into a wallet, you would have to try every single private key first, right? It doesn't, let's say there's only one wallet in the world. One wallet in the world, it has all the Bitcoin in it. The amount of private keys that it would take to open that, excuse me, is there's only one. One private key would open that address. But if there's 2 to the 256 private keys, then you would have to aim your computer at that one address, and you would have to try every single private key. To get to 2 to the 256, which is undecillion, whatever, it's trillions, and it's actually, it might be trillions of years. It would take trillions of years with trillions of computers with trillions of hashes per second. It's not possible. Now, I will say this: there's a talk about quantum computers. I'm not a buyer into this whole idea. I think it's bullshit. But let's say you believe in it. That in a couple of years we're going to have quantum computers, which instead of having to do a certain amount of thinking processes per second, can all of a sudden do like multiples at the same time, which doesn't even really make sense to me. But let's say you can do that. The thing about Bitcoin is that you could get together and say, okay, we want to add more difficulty into the Bitcoin address. So let's say somebody found out, oh wait, we found a computer that actually hacked one of these addresses and got in there. Oh shit, we better change it from 2 to the 256 to 2 to the 580 or whatever. And then you could just progressively make the private keys more and more difficult to hack. So it's even then, I don't even believe that. But let's say in 20 years, there's a certain computer that comes out that all of a sudden can do enough hashes that within 1,000 years or something would possibly get into a Bitcoin address. Well, that's going to be a problem because even if it's 1 in 1,000 years, that's still a decent chance that it could happen, right? We don't want it to happen. So as soon as we knew that was a possibility, you'd be able to fix those things. Right now, it's an impossibility, meaning there's no way. There's just no way. I think one time I described it in one of my videos. I'd have to show you exactly what I mean by this. But 2 to the 256 can be reduced to basically 2 to the 32nd 8 times, right? And 2 to the 32nd, the one way to look at that that's easier is 4 billion. Okay, so basically think of 4 billion times 4 billion times 4 billion times 4 billion times 4 billion. Okay, so all the way out 8 times. And then you can start to see that, let's say we have a computer that can do 4 billion hashes per second. Okay, let's say it's the computer we're looking at right now. We can all at our desk, even though your computer can probably do 50,000 hashes per second. But let's pretend we have massive GPUs. We have the best GPUs possible. We can do 4 billion hashes per second, right? That's our first 4 billion. So now we have to multiply that by 4 billion. So let's pretend, even though Google has like a couple million, maybe 10 million servers across the world, let's say all of a sudden that they have 4 billion, right? So they've got 4 billion Google computers all running the 4 billion hashes per second that I just said our computers can do. Okay, so that's times the second 4 billion. So now we've got Google has 4 billion computers. All right, so now times it by 4 billion again, meaning let's say we gave one of those Googleplexes, Google has 4 billion computers. Let's say we gave each one of those to half of the people on Earth. So now we're going to go by the next 4 billion. So now we have 4 billion hashes per second on our card. Google has 4 billion of those computers, and we've given each of 4 billion people on Earth one of those sets of 4 billion computers. Okay, and then we have to multiply by 4 billion again. So let's pretend that there's 4 billion Earths. So now on each of those 4 billion Earths, you have 4 billion people who each have 4 billion computers to themselves, each with 4 billion hashes per second on a card. We still are only at the fourth 4 billion. Multiply that by, 4 billion seconds, which is like 100 and something years, 150 years. Okay, now that's the next 4 billion. Now multiply that by 4 billion. So 150 years times 4 billion. So what you've got at the end of that is even with every single, there's 4 billion Earths, each with 4 billion people, each with 4 billion computers, each doing 4 billion hashes per second, and still they would only get an address right once out of whatever 150 times 4 billion is. So 600 billion years. So that's what the power of big numbers is. So any computer, and think about it, we've got pretty impressive supercomputers right now, and they're made to look weak by Bitcoin simply because it's a big number. It's just a big number. That's all that it is. And so it's completely open. It's not even, that's why when you say it's not, we don't know what the code is, we do know what the code is. In fact, you can see it yourself, and it's all done cryptography. It's not like anything's done behind closed doors. It's not like anything's done in secret. In fact, you can actually generate your own Bitcoin address offline. I could shut my computer down right now or shut off my internet and restart my computer with like an Ubuntu disk or some sort of an operating system that is connected to nothing. And I would be able to generate my own address and my own private key based off of the math. I don't even need to be on the internet. And I could send money to that address. And I generated it offline. Nobody in the world would ever be able to know that that address exists, that I own it, that I created it. Nothing. Why? Because of the power of mathematics. That number is so huge, 115 undecillion, is so big that it's impossible for anybody to ever generate the same private key twice by accident. Meaning I can go offline and generate a private key, and there is zero chance of anybody having that private key already, which is insane to think about. Because all my computer's doing is coming up with a, what do you want to call it? An address mathematically, right? I'm trying to think of the word. But anyway, it's coming up with an address on its own. And if it does that through, random. Sorry, I don't know why I couldn't think of the word. So it's a completely random process. But the number's so big that it's impossible to randomly get the same number twice ever. Nobody another number is like, have you ever looked at 2 to the 160, right? Doesn't seem like that big of a number. And one way to look at it, and this is where our minds get confused. Do you know if you flipped a coin and you wrote down, let's say heads is 1 and tails is 0, right? So it's just a 1 or a 0. And you flip it 160 times, and so you have a big number, 1 0 0 0 1 1 1 0 0. Okay, 160 digits long. That it's impossible that anybody in the past or anybody in the future will ever flip the same thing you did. That seems, on its surface, you're like, that can't be true. That's what's crazy, is it is true. Is that if you flip a coin, and that's basically what a private key is it's a random generator. You can also move it into hex format. You can move it into binary. There's a lot of different ways to move it in different, revelations. But that's what happens when you start getting these kind of impossible numbers. They're just so big that nobody can break them. Nobody can hack that. So that's what I mean by it's unhackable, that nobody's going to break into anybody's wallet, at least not anytime soon. 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, maybe different. But right now, nobody can do it. And so, I don't know, is that kind of what you meant by what is it not hackable?
Well, yeah, I was actually, asking for the specific reason because the good folks over at Temporal Defense Systems in Washington would disagree with you and say that all encryption at this point can be broken with the quantum computers. And the good folks at D-Wave would probably hold up that argument too. But, if you take issue with the quantum computer, and I do take some issues with them as well. I don't think they operate completely how they claim that they do, but they do actually work in a different way from our standard computers and even our supercomputers. And they have been shown to be able to do these types of calculations that have never been achieved before with some success. So it could be argued that there is a possible way that they can possibly break the encryption. And, especially not knowing who created this whole option of Bitcoin, that kind of leaves an open door in my view. Why does it
matter, though? Why does that matter who created it? Let me explain. If I create something and I just write it on a piece of paper and then I put it out on the internet and I disappear, and anybody does whatever they want with that paper and what I wrote, then does it really matter who wrote it? Because
I would say it does, because in my view, intention is everything.
Well,
intent is everything.
Well, they wrote their intent, and that's in the white paper. So what I'm saying is, they might have a nefarious reason behind it, right? They could be like trying to trick you. The problem is people can read the white paper. They can read the entire layout of the system. So why, if the person was trying to do something nefarious, how would they hide it in an open coded item that has its entire proof of work right in front of you?
But it doesn't though. There is arguments that say a small percentage of the original code has been scrutinized.
I don't know what that means. That's impossible. It's impossible. Nobody would trust it at all if that were true.
I'll see if I can find the
unless you mean that, like, okay, so let's say I write a white paper and it's got 100% of code on it, and then I hand it off to somebody and somebody says, oh, I'm going to use this 75% and make something from it. Well, then, yeah, you wouldn't have needed the other 15%, obviously, if you're only going to use my 75 to create whatever you create. right? You can't then say whatever that guy creates. You can't say.
I'll see if I can find something
Yeah,
from
please.
this gang of people that said it, but there's other things, but I don't want to lean too heavily on this. If we
No,
were
it's
going to
good.
do the typical things that we did to, like, say, mainstream news, because we know what they do, some of the first things that happen with Bitcoin, like the initial website address on the 18th of August in '08, and then he goes on to publish his first white paper. That happens on Halloween in '08. So all the way up into '09 is when version 1 of Bitcoin gets released, and that happens on January 9, 2009. 2009 could be a 9/11 encode. January 9 is possibly a 9/11 encode, particularly when you tack version 1 being released to it. As I go through this, basically what I see is what I would call poppycock from the media, but I know the media's intent, where here I don't have such a clear shot. I can't prove intent here like I can with media. But my point is,
Well, it's really the media that put that information out, right?
well, that's the second point I was going to make. I'm getting this off Wikipedia, so that is your media, right?
If you look at Wikipedia, up in the upper right hand corner of Satoshi, is it gives his birth date, which is hilarious because, of course, he's not a real person, and therefore, how would you know his birth date?
Well, actually, in the Wikipedia thing, they try to act like he is at the beginning. Then they try to act. Here's the other thing. It smacks of the bullshit we get from media all the time, because they find a guy that has the name within his name, and they
Right.
run him down trying to pin it on. It has the same nonsense plastered all over it. When someone makes a car, you know who the chief engineer was. If he had a team, you know who his team was. And then the other things go on
Well, we
here.
do know who the team was.
there's
That's
well,
we
there's
know-
an expert here claiming he read through all the stuff that Satoshi did, and he's claiming it's pretty clear he had a team of 11 people. Why is
Correct.
it always 9s and 11s all the way through this?
I've seen the same thing. They say because they, and you know the first couple people, you just don't know the original. The people that were like involved in the, like I said, it would be the equivalent of me writing some code, me coming up with this idea, and then getting
Well,
Crow
there's-
involved and getting Jason involved.
There's
and then
more
it would be
there's
known.
more problems though, because so supposedly this guy who doesn't exist gets sick of doing it in mid 2010, and he hands all the source code over to Gavin Anderson or Andresen, who's a software developer. And where is he? In Amherst, Massachusetts. Go ahead and do a lookup on that town. I'm just suspicious, but that would, in fact, have to insinuate that Gavin Andresen knows absolutely how Bitcoin started. Doesn't it have to mean that? Is it possible that Gavin Andresen inherited the code base without understanding who made it?
I believe that the problem with it is these guys knew each other from a cryptographer forum, right?
So then we're faced with the problem that Gavin Andresen is a liar.
Why?
Because if he knows who it is and he won't divulge,
I
this
just
is
said-
currency.
I just said that it took place on a cryptographer forum. You don't know who people are in a forum. How would you know
Wow.
somebody? So this person posted, hey, I've got this idea. I want to do this, this, and this. And somebody else said, okay, well, I'll help you. We'll look at it. They were all cryptographers. This is what they did. When he came up with this code,
It says here that he handed the key and source repository code and the network alert key to Anderson.
Right.
If you want to act like they were just in a chat room and he liked the cut of his avatar, I suppose you can make that argument.
oh, you're saying that it says he handed it in person? I don't believe that that's ever been said.
I'm saying that if you're going to get involved in this thing, and this is 2010, by the way, I think by then Big Bang had already done its Bitcoin episode, right? Pretty sure. I'd have to look to
2000.
know.
I don't know. 2010, it was worth a penny or 5 cents.
Well,
or
yeah, to
6
play a
cents.
devil's advocate here, these people may not have known what it was going to do. Not saying that they didn't want it to do it.
Nobody did.
Right.
Nobody did. In order for it to do what it's done now, number one, it would have to stand this test of time, right? Number two, it would have to be improved upon when needed, which has happened. For instance, they added what they're called SegWit addresses, which just to add more complexity and more private keys. So this is the problem I had back in the day. Is I looked at it as a very short-term thing. When I looked at it, I said, I don't like some of these things. I don't like the fact that people can put in the wrong address and send it to nowhere, and the coins are lost. And there was a bunch of problems I had in 2013. The thing is, all those things have been worked out by developers, by people who can code, people who can create products around Bitcoin, people who make wallets that are safe now. If you get a wallet like an Exodus wallet and you try and send Bitcoin and you put in the wrong address, as soon as you hit send, the wallet says, sorry, that's not a Bitcoin address. Complete. Now, that didn't happen in 2013. In 2013, you put the wrong address in there and you hit send, that money was gone forever. It never made it anywhere because it wasn't coded to handle incorrect payment addresses. But now wallets are coded so that they don't allow it. So what I'm saying is innovation is key. Innovation around something decentralized is even better. And if you have people constantly working on things and constantly trying to improve the way it's used, then it's got a great chance of lasting. Now, again, the hacking part of it's a problem. If it can get hacked, then it's going to cause huge problems, right? The problem, the thing is with these big numbers that whoever created this set up, they made it so that it's not hackable, at least in our next couple of years, as far as the technology that we know or what we think will come along. Now, again, quantum computers, if you made them to point them directly at a wallet and you tried to hash them out, I still don't even think the amount of...
I'm not buying that. Yeah, that's like the nuclear weapon argument. That's just a scare tactic, and I'm with Wayne. I don't believe that quantum computing works in the way they say it does.
Oh, me neither, at all. So okay, so if you don't believe in that, then you realize that even all the computers on Earth put together would take.
No, I don't think it's hackable in the conventional sense. I just don't.
Right, it would already be hacked. I mean, that's the thing, is that there's so much money involved. I could show you wallets right now that have $3.6 trillion in them. If it was hackable, somebody would steal that.
Yeah, it'd be quicker for a psychic just to do what they do. Exactly.
So, I mean, the other thing that I think is important, and this is the thing, is I understand where you guys are coming from because I'm skeptical of everything. In fact, I think I'm more skeptical than should be. But I'm overly skeptical. Now, with Bitcoin, the only thing is that I've looked at it over and over again, and I don't see anything glaring. And what I mean by that is that, again, if the government had something sinister in mind, then you know that there would be certain facts that would be involved. Number one, all governments who have ever done fiat money in all of history have always made it so that they can add money to the system, right? This is how you basically keep a population enslaved. This is how you keep them being wage slaves, is you kind of increase the production of money.
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's what does it.
Exactly. Okay, so with Bitcoin, and if you read the white paper, whoever wrote it said things like, the way the big banks handle things is not the way it should be. It should be a currency that is a set amount, that's going to be released on a certain schedule, because you can't release it all at the beginning or everybody at the beginning gets rich and nobody would ever buy in. So he kind of came up with this system. And the one thing that he solved that nobody had ever solved before was the problem of double spend or counterfeiting. That's why there was no such thing as digital money yet, because they said everything can be copied. Look at music files, look at movie files, as people can copy it and then they hand it out. So how could you ever make a money that's not copyable? And that's what he did. That's what he created. That's why people think it's so amazing. Now, again, whether that's a person or not, to me, doesn't matter. I don't care if it was a team of 500 people, because you can read the paper, you can read the code, and you can see how it operates. So there is no code in there that says at any time anything different is going to happen. There is no code.
There's a problem with that logic, Jeran. Are you smart enough, even though you've seen how it's done, are you smart enough to replicate it?
What the
code. So he cracks these problems, and they actually let you see behind the curtain how he did it. Can you deal with that, even though you've been told the trick? Probably not. What my argument would be is that technology at this level, you act like you know what's going on. You have no way of knowing how this was put together. If there was an Easter egg put somewhere, you just don't know.
Me or people?
Anyone who wants to act like it's true.
All the coins that have been developed off of the Bitcoin code. Think of there's hundreds, if not thousands.
That is knowable.
What?
That is knowable, right?
No, I'm saying that they've used that code to create their own product, to create their own coin.
I think we're.
So what's worth more is the code that actually codes Bitcoin worth more than the actual Bitcoin itself? Then, if other people could make their own product without necessarily the cap of Bitcoin.
No, it doesn't. Knowing the code doesn't allow you to hack it. The code tells you why it's not hackable.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is they could actually use this same code to create their own digital currency.
They've done it. There's thousands of them. There's thousands of them. What do you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So what's more valuable, that code or the actual Bitcoin? See, that's the thing. If you could do it over and over again, then how is Bitcoin going to hold value?
Did his
as opposed
replication?
to some other cryptocurrency? Like that's my whole point here. At some point, people are going to decide that Bitcoin's not worth collecting anymore. Just like if you collect something like baseball cards or whatever, it's worth more to certain collectors than it is to others. Somebody's going to be willing to pay more for it, and somebody's going to pay less. Well, at some point, the bottom's going to fall out, and people are going to say, well, I don't really want the Bitcoin. I don't see any value in it anymore because I could buy this Ethereum thing, which is worth more right now, and I'll go with that one. And,
right. So then they would
to
have
be
to
fair,
sell,
that could
right?
be true of anything, though.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
And I understand that. But
That is true of everything.
Yeah, what I'm saying though is, if you have a finite value of Bitcoin that's made, that's one thing, and if that was actually the primary and only digital currency that there was, then yes, the value of that would be astronomical, especially if that does at some point convert into the digital money system that we use. But the problem here is, okay, we have this open source code now that could create any type of a digital currency we want. Well, at some point, the market's going to get flooded with all these different digital currencies, and that's going to make them worthless, in my view, because there's no regulation on it. So once again, the regulation thing comes into play, and this is what the central banks look at.
Right, but a 1952, Roy Campanella baseball card or a Joe DiMaggio card is worth a ton right now, based on your theory, because more Topps cards came out every year after, because people can make their own baseball cards, and there became Donruss and Upper Deck and Score and all these different ones, that it would hurt the value of the 1952 Topps. No, it's still the
But here comes the other problem, though. At some point, what could happen if you're using like that analogy? I use that analogy first, like the baseball card one.
Okay.
Well, what happens if they print more Babe Ruth cards? Or create more Babe Ruth cards, per se.
They can't, right?
It's not exactly the same as the Bitcoin. I understand, and that may not be the best analogy here. But at some point, I'm thinking that the entire Bitcoin system itself, they're going to say, this is just one of many different types of coins.
Yes,
it's not really anything I find intrinsically valuable when I could actually deal in this other form of currency elsewhere. And I think it's going to drop to the wayside.
There's some coins that are worth 0.01 cents, right? So there's some. Let's look at like BAT as a coin. It's called Basic Attention Token. So right now it's like 35 cents. Okay. So what you're saying is, because Bitcoin is worth $45,000 for one, based on what you just said, then you're like, well, why aren't people just selling their Bitcoin to get the BAT? Right? Because it's only 35 cents. So why not just get a ton of BAT? Well, people can do that, and they do that. The problem with that is, when they get rid of their Bitcoin, they have to sell it for the market rate, which is 45,000. So what you're saying there is just happens every day all around the world in everything.
But I got a question here. Was there any patent ever? Because he solved a pretty big issue here, the duplication issue alone. Was there any copyright or patenting or trademarking done on any of this?
Absolutely not. It's this. You're missing the point of.
No. I'm not missing the point. I'm just wondering if anyone tried to say, "Hey, this was a genius thing. I want to patent it."
No, because the reason that it was released is because this is a brilliant thing and it's open source. Here you go. Anybody can use it.
Yeah, I get all that. I was just wondering if anyone had filed.
No, I don't think that. I'm not sure that you could at this point.
Not that we know of. I mean, and that's the thing, and that comes back to who exactly created this thing again, the anonymity behind it all, because it is an open source type of code that could be used by pretty much anybody to generate any type of coin they want with it. Right. But at the same point, does that necessarily make it a valuable thing if anybody could produce their own type of currency?
No, because it takes other steps, right? It takes other things. So the scam that's out there right now is people doing coins where they just lie about what the coin's potential is, right? So I say to everybody listening to the show right now, hey, me, Crow, and Jason, we have this new coin. It's called the Crow Jason coin. And we're going to do all these things that you can tip creators. You can send people who do YouTube videos. You can buy into Crow's podcast with it, whatever. And so we say we have 1 million coins and we're going to release them and we're going to start selling them for 10 cents each. And we get 500 people who buy. And now we say, okay, now the price is 20 cents and 1,000 people buy. Now it's 50 cents, whatever. And at the end of the 1 million coins, we just all take off and go live in Aruba. That's what's happening all over the place, because we never actually did anything with our coin. We never actually developed anything. We just told a lie. So that's happening everywhere, and people are losing their
Okay,
assets.
so what's the incentive for people to actually develop their coin beyond that then? See,
Correct.
that's the whole problem.
The problem, this is the problem with other coins. A lot of other coins have like an initial release, which is a problem, right? Where they'll say like, okay, at the beginning, we're going to give all the founding fathers or all the first people who got involved, we're going to give them this massive payout. They get a bunch of coins. And then they start the coin process after that. And the reason it continues is because so many people from the beginning were offered all these free coins. So they start using them and spending them. And then they want it to be listed on an exchange. So people start paying for it so they can go sell it there. So that's the problem with a lot of the coins. But with every coin, you can see the rules behind it. You can see the setup. You can see how the code runs. And so with some coins, and there's some coins that are private. That's the great thing about the ones that are coming out. Like I think Monero is great. It's what Bitcoin should have been. So this is where I disagree with what you're saying. Things like Monero have come along. They've taken the code of Bitcoin and they've said, we don't like this about it, and we don't like this about it, and we don't like this about it. And then they adjust it, and then they create their own coin, right? And then from there, it kind of takes off. Now, Monero right now is only like $170 a coin. But it has the same limit. Well, it's about the same limit as Bitcoin. It has a little different end game. At the end of the 21 million, it will keep releasing a little bit for like all time, but it's still would be considered deflationary because it's so little that come out. It's just enough to pay the miners. But anyway, it's like $170 a coin. I think that has more of an upside if you're talking about multiplications in the future because it's private. The difference being I can't, if I send money to Crow, boom, he gets it. I can't go click on Crow's wallet and see what he has accumulated in that wallet. In fact, the system would laugh at me and says, you're not trying to do that really. With Bitcoin, it's different than that. If I sent money to Crow's Bitcoin wallet and he, which I have to know the address to send it, and let's say everybody who's ever sent money to Crow sends it to that address because that's the only one he gives out, well, I would be able to click on his address and see how much money he has. So that's a problem with Bitcoin. Now, there's lots of ways around that. A lot of wallets handle that for you. There's something, a lot of people change addresses every time, meaning if Crow gave me a different address every single time I paid him, when I paid him and I went and clicked on his address, I would only ever see the money I paid him, right? Because that's the only time he's ever used that address. That's the other thing about addresses is you can make 1 million addresses. I could make 1 million addresses. Jason can make 1 million. Everybody on Earth can make 1 million. And we would still be not even close to how many addresses are possible.
There's another thing to kind of want to get it almost seems to me like whoever did this or however it came to be, they had to know about banking. And as I look down through what the wiki record wants us to think is true of all this, on the very first Bitcoin embed, the first 50, he attached a pretty grandiose thing. The Times, 3 January 2009, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. That's pretty grandiose for a thing that you're just making, But when you look at the overall, how far it's come, how well it's done, how many people have bought into it for that matter, although it's in the scope of the world, it's not that many. A lot of people have made some serious money doing this Bitcoin thing, but they had to have been tied to the banks. And as I scanned down, I was not aware that this other dude who wanted to try to figure out if Satoshi was a real guy, he claims that of the 500 posts or something he went over, there were all kinds of comments on fractional reserve system, downing the fractional reserve system. So from the get-go, there's a bank tie.
Well, supposedly, the person hated the banks. I mean, this is, again, it would be a great story.
But with knowledge of them as well.
Yeah, and here's one thing I will say about it, and whether this will be taken the wrong way or not, is I think it's too good to be true. Now, what I mean by that is that usually everything that I've ever seen that you say that about turns out to be so, right? But if there was something that was possibly a chance at people to get at least to ruffle the feathers of this system, it is Bitcoin. And what I mean by that is it matches all the check marks that I would make. That would be something I would say, wait a second, now this is, number one, it has to be open source, like I said. So if Crow can find me any evidence that it's not, which I don't think is possible, but let's say he does, that would be a huge problem. Number one, if it's open source. Number two, people can read the code, people can develop off of it, and that you're able to do things that the government would never allow you to do, that it's not inflationary, that it's deflationary, that if there's a set amount, that it will always gain value. Those things would all be required to have something that has a chance of going up against this monetary system. Now, I recognize that they run this country on that monetary system. They run the world on the idea of debt slavery. So they can't allow it to um, become what some people might think it is. Kind of, I don't know if it was Wayne or whoever was talking about that would need to become a replacement for the dollar. They won't let that happen, right? So what I mean by that is they will come out with a coin like Crow said. They will say, hey, it's this new US dollar coin, and guess what? Right now, if you turn in $1,000 cash, we'll give you $1,100. Everybody on Earth or everybody in the United States is going to run right away because they want $1,100 for their $1,000 in cash, and they're all going to start using this United States coin. Now, with any coin that the United States ever creates, there will not be a cap, meaning they can add money to it whenever they want, which means it's no different than the dollar. And when they give away free money, like turn in your 1,000 and get 1,100, well, they will, of course, have a design behind that. They're not like giving out money for reals. They're actually, there's a whole kind of trick behind it, right? Just like they've done for all times to everybody. So will everybody buy in? Will everybody start using that coin? Will that become the world monetary object, this USD coin that's a digital coin? Yeah, but just like Crow said, they're not going to allow you to pass it down to your grandkids. They're not going to allow you to store it in a private account that they don't have eyes on. So once we know that that's what they would create, that's what the government would create. If there's something that does the opposite of that, then you have to wonder, how could the government be involved? Why would the government ever create a system or a store of value that I'm able to create right now that nobody in the world would know that I own, that nobody would know that I handed it to my son, that nobody would know that I hid it? It's even worse than that. You can hide the money in your head. Think about that. Meaning that there's a 24 seed word phrase that you can use to get your money out of anywhere. So I can create money. I can create a wallet. I can send my money there. I can create this. I can get the seed words from that. I can throw everything away, crush the wallet I made, burn my computer down, burn my house down. And that money exists in my head with those 24 words. Now, I'm not recommending that to anybody because the human mind isn't good at remembering things like that. So have another plan in place. But I'm saying if the government came after me today and I need to run away, if I have any bank account in this country, it's shut down. I'm not going to be able to access it when I get to Singapore or whatever. There's no way I can even take any value with me. I'm not going to be able to travel on a plane with a bunch of gold and silver. I'm shit out of luck. Bitcoin is the first time ever that's been created that I would be able to, using a piece of paper, write down 24 words, hide it under my shoe. I could fly all around the world, Singapore, whatever. When I got there, I would need to find one computer, sit down at the computer, put my words in, and I have all my finances right in front of me. So it is something that the world has never seen before. And I understand why it's to doubt that. Why would we, that we should doubt it? I get it. But if you really look into it and see what happened, it matches all the boxes of somebody who is trying to kind of create a way around the monetary system. Now, again, they're going to come after it. They have to. They cannot allow it to be. Now, here's the one way we can win. The way you win is you never think about it as money. Meaning, Jeran, what is a Bitcoin worth in 20 years? It's worth a Bitcoin. All right, great. You just worry about what you can get for it. And I don't mean because again, I don't want to go cash out my Bitcoin and have to do KYC and them know exactly who I am. What I would rather is be able to send it to Crow, and Crow accepts that as value, and he allows me to be a member on his website for $7 a month, and that he takes Bitcoin for that. And then when he wants to buy something from, Jason, he pays him in Bitcoin. When Jason wants to buy something from whoever, he pays in Bitcoin. Now, if we do that, all of a sudden, we have just created a money system. There doesn't need to be a worry about dollars and but the problem is right now they've got everybody so locked into the idea that the only money that exists is that paper, that worthless paper in your wallet. When really a $1 bill and a $100 bill is still the same thing. It's just a piece of paper. The only thing that's different about those is your trust in it and the rest of the people. Now they've got people brainwashed. They don't have people capable of seeing that there can be other things that can be considered money.
It's just not bulletproof though. Jeran, are you aware of this money guy, Gregory Mannarino, that everyone's kind of into? He follows everything to do with money. You should check him out. When this whole fraud started and the money markets went sideways and he said common sense doesn't exist, this is all just a shell game now, he pointed out that when the central banks started pumping greenbacks into 126 other central banks, just printing the money endlessly, he said that they were spending 6 times that. Remember the TARP payment? Everyone was pissed off under Bush. What was that? Mm-hmm. 3 or 6 trillion. He said they were spending 6 times that a day, every day since the pandemic started. Mm-hmm. So if that is correct or even close to correct, what would stop someone from just saying, sure, I'll give you face value. I'll make you rich right now. You want 45 grand of Bitcoin? Here you go. Here's $8 million because I just printed it. It's fiat. I made it up out of thin air, and I'm an agent for the central bank, and I could make this up till the end of time, like we're doing right now, as we send off God knows how many gazillion dollars to every central bank to ensure that when we reset here and start coming to this new world order, whatever it might look like, the inflation is insane. And there's a track record to prove that the inflation follows every time there's any kind of a big currency reset. But my point is that could happen tomorrow.
But is every one of those coin resets, any kind of currency reset, have they all been centralized? Yes.
Well, everything has always been centralized. My point is there's no security for the system. It's, to me, the power of Bitcoin is that it's a bit underground for its entirety. If it gets too big, it'll get swept aside one way or the other. Right now, there's a core group of people who are technical, who are probably mostly young, who are driving it, and some people have gotten very wealthy off it. Some people have lost their shirts. My point is, if it grows to any sizable portion of the GDP of a nation, it get crushed like a bug.
Yeah, well, I don't know what that necessarily means. I don't know.
I just gave you two examples. The United States wakes up tomorrow and says, guess what? All you regulated crypto people, it's against the law now. There's one way.
You and
the other way is that an agent from the central bank poses as a rich Saudi prince and says, I'll buy just starts hitting people. Here you go, 45K of Bitcoin, and starts handing out the fiat like it's the candy that it is.
That already happens. What do you mean? I can go get, if I have a Bitcoin right now, I can go get 45,000. So why do I need a Saudi guy to do that? What good is that going to do anybody?
Because he's buying up all of it.
He can do that today. What do you mean? Why?
Well, the point that Crow's making is with the limited amount currency. With the fiat currency, they could print an unlimited amount of it and buy out all the limited Bitcoin currency.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so you print a bunch of money.
Here's another similar problem that all the people in the metal markets that I kind of pay attention to, because there's actually intrinsic value there. I keep bringing up this problem over and over, and no one will take me serious, and I don't even know why. I said, what if silver goes to, because everyone's saying silver is going to go through the roof. I said, what if it goes to 1,000 an ounce tomorrow? Will you cash in? And everyone's all, hell yes. And I said, you would cash in $1,000 an ounce silver you bought for 20, anywhere between $12 and $20 an ounce. It hits 100 an ounce and you're going to cash in. Yes. I said, but aren't you concerned that the fiat reset hasn't happened? What are you cashing into?
Right.
You're cashing into fiat.
Right. So that's why I keep saying that the problem with it is that we keep referring to the money that we get for Bitcoin. That's, it's going to be that way for a while.
Yeah,
but
so you
it doesn't
buy
have
a loaf of bread with Bitcoin, it will be that way.
Well, you can. I mean, just would need to cash out, right?
That's the point.
Right.
There's still cash to get what you need to live.
Well, let me tell you why people won't accept it right now for a loaf of bread, and why that's going to change is because people that are in businesses don't want to speculate. So, for instance, if let's say Bitcoin is 45,000 today, right? And there's a car dealership that sells, Jaguars, and I want to go buy a Jaguar, and I give them one Bitcoin, and they give me the car. Okay, great, easy transaction. The problem with it is they don't want to be sitting on that Bitcoin because in a month it could be down to 35,000, and they don't want to lose 10,000. Now, in a month it could go up to 55,000, and they actually made 10,000, but they're not in the business of speculating. They're in the business of making profit for selling cars, right? The problem with that is. So right now, there is companies, you can buy cars from certain car companies with Bitcoin, but what they do is the second that they get that Bitcoin, they're immediately cashing it out. So here's my all right, we want 35,000. So they already think of it like that, right? When people realize that it will grow in value, then people will start to be like, oh, it's not really speculation. The car dealership will look at it like, yeah, it could go down to 35,000 in a month, but it will come back and end up being higher than 45,000 at the end of the year.
See, what you're describing is a freaking casino, no different than a stock market. And that is why I recommended the book to you. A true currency free of all the problems and things we hate is one that will never inflate, never devalue. A penny is a penny today. A penny will be a penny in 1,000 years if we stick to the system.
I like gold.
The problem becomes is that you can't say that it's not speculation when the frickin' value changes, whether it's intrinsic value or perceived value.
This is why you're mistaken. You're thinking of money. You're thinking of money too much.
It doesn't matter what I'm thinking of. If the value is not stable, it's speculative.
No, it's
And
it is. It
this
might
all
be,
ties back to some
but think
basic
about money.
economic factors.
Money is going down. That's why. So, for instance, when they handed out those $2,000 stimulus checks or whatever it was, and the money in gold and silver went up in price, and everybody says gold and silver are going up, I was laughing because I said, no, it's not. They just gave a bunch of free money away. So of course the price of everything goes up. That's the problem with the way that they handle money. That's why a dollar bought you a loaf of bread back in the 80s, and now you can't. And that's why you could buy a popcorn at the movies for 5 cents in the 40s. So these things, that's the problem with our money, is it's going the other direction, right? With Bitcoin, there's only 21 million ever. And so the value will go up of that asset because it's got a very
value, but the track record shows that it goes both ways, Jeran. We have a record to look at.
That's what I was going to ask about when you said people have lost their ass. If anybody lost their ass on Bitcoin, it's simply because they sold when they shouldn't have.
Dude, there's a whole show on television about the onset of Bitcoin and all the people got in and how many people literally lost their ass by trying to build computers to coin it, the regulation that came in, complete businesses that failed, people that got screwed by central hubs that were supposed to be handling the Bitcoin.
Mt. Gox,
that screwed people over. But my point is regardless of whether you want to separate the idea from how we think about money, let's say Bitcoin is not money, it has nothing to do with money. But now I can go to 7-Eleven and I can get myself a Hershey bar with Bitcoin. So I will ask a simple question. If I have 1 Bitcoin, can I buy more Hershey bars if I have 10 Bitcoins? Which one of those two things is going to give me more Hershey bars?
Of course, 10.
So knowing that the value of my 1 Bitcoin can decrease or increase, by definition, is a casino. It's speculative. It's out of your control. It is a thing that you wake up to find out what's true. It's a bit like asking for the next hit in blackjack. You might get lucky, you might not get lucky. And the truth of it is that if more times you were lucky, a lot of people would be making a lot more from it, right?
Is that's a lie, though? I mean, as far as like, okay, let's say there's a $10 bill, and you said a $10 bill worth today is the same as a $10 bill in 30 years, right? They're the same. The problem with that is of course, they're not the same. It's what you'll get for those items. So
that's my point.
Well, what do you mean? So Bitcoin today is worth a Bitcoin in 30 years?
No, it's not, because the value of a Bitcoin is market driven, and someone might be willing to pay $34,000 for a single Bitcoin today. Maybe next week they'll only pay $5,000. You don't know.
But is the value of a dollar market driven as well?
Doesn't matter what the dollar's about, because it's the system we don't like. It's just the system we're trapped in. Right. We're looking at Bitcoin as if it was some great possible way to break the chain. That's the way I view this. And as an underground service, in a way it is, as underground service. But everything else I know about it, it won't be for me. It will never be for me.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
I would say that a lot of this boils down to basic economic principles. The only things that really hold true intrinsic value are capital, goods, and services. So when we're assigning a monetary figure to those, well, that always varies depending on the market. But the things that don't is that loaf of bread. That loaf of bread always has the same value. And that's the important thing. So we can't really truly base the worth of this particular currency on the fact that it's a limited resource or in comparison with the dollar system we use now. Right. It's all about, the economic end of it. So that's going to be what determines it.
Yeah, and I don't look at it that way. What I think is that since it's the scarcest asset that there is, and I see it as
that's the point, though. It's not really an asset. Like a loaf of bread is an asset. Land is an asset.
Well, look up the definition.
Having ownership of this, capital, goods, and services.
The definition of asset. Tell me it's not an asset. Look at the definition.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying it doesn't hold a true intrinsic value per se. Neither does the dollar for that.
If you have one right now, you can go get $45,000 for it. How does it not have value? I don't understand.
Because
that's the point. The dollar doesn't do you any good. You can't eat a dollar.
You have to ignore the spiritual aspirations of a human being to claim that Bitcoin has intrinsic value. That is the problem with the entirety of the digital world.
I'm not claiming
let me see if I can illustrate this in a better way.
You agree it's an asset, though. Let me get that straight before you.
I will agree with you. It's an asset when we're looking at it.
It's an asset well, let's get this
Anything
straight.
is an asset as long as somebody else finds value in it. It's
There
not
it
the
is.
Bitcoin. It's
Jason,
anything.
it's
It's
That's
anything.
the definition. So I
If
said, look at the
someone
definition.
agrees it's an asset, then
Okay.
it's an asset. But
Okay.
everyone does not agree that that is an asset.
Everybody,
My point here is consider this idea.
do enough.
So,
There's enough
500 years
to
ago,
consider.
someone built a cathedral, and they encoded all this reality into the cathedral of a path a human being could take, and every shred of it is based in reality, not fantasy, not nonsense, not anything. And from the point we began to move away from there, we began to enter a fantasy-based reality. It started by believing in false histories and false religions and false everything, all the way fast forward to where we are now into the digital age. The digital age is the epitome of the padlock that's going to lock behind us for anyone who wants to fully express what it means to be a human being. And that is my biggest beef above all things besides freedom, because freedom's pretty freaking important to me. Ask Jason what I will do for freedom. My point here is that this is the antithesis of that aspiration of the divine spark in a human being, simply to try to get out of a system that sucks so bad we no longer have words for it. But by every measure of what I know about it, I don't understand how you can distinguish it as any different from the nightly news until something else happens in a way.
I can't help you get past that one. Other than, if you've already said that freedom's important to you, and what Bitcoin offers you is something that's never been offered to you before. It's freedom to use finances the way you want, meaning in every single transaction that you deal with.
It's not, Jeran. It is a permanent record. It's a permanent record of everything you've ever purchased in a blockchain, tied to an address yes, it is.
Anybody know what you purchased? How does anybody know what you purchased?
Because you have to use the damn internet to use the product.
Yeah, but there's nothing to say what you purchased. If I talked to you on the phone right now and you said you want to sell me, I don't know, a baseball card, and I said, how much? And you're like, I don't know, I'll take $10, and I send you Bitcoin. There's no record that it's the baseball card we bought. It's just a record of me transferring money to you. And nobody even knows that you own that address or me. It's just between you and I. So here's the thing. In every transaction that you've ever dealt with, Crow, in anything that you've ever done has gone through a middleman. It's the only way to do it right now, except for if you hand cash to somebody else, in which case that money was still printed by a middleman. So we don't have to count that. But so cash to cash, person to person transactions, set that aside. Anything else, you have to go through a bank. To send Jason money, you have to send it through a bank. Either it's PayPal, it's a bank. Those banks cost money. They have employees. They have land that they purchase. That money gets transferred onto us. With Bitcoin, all of a sudden, you're able to transfer money to anyone in the world for a very, 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 very low price.
You are, in fact, cutting out the middleman. I understand.
Okay, so the thing that caught my ear is I'm also a big believer in freedom of speech, freedom of everything. And I look at any kind of coding on a website that's open source as freedom of speech. It's what it is. It's somebody who is coding something for everyone to see. It's a free speech platform to say whatever you want. Now, the computers have been programmed to run those codes. Bitcoin is that. So somebody used their free speech.
Okay.
I
think we're gonna have to agree to disagree. You have to use a thing called the internet to use Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
Who controls the internet? Do you?
No.
Does the Bitcoin community?
Nope.
Does anyone sane in the world?
No, but
corporations control the internet.
Sure. So if they shut down,
which means they control every record, every transaction, every communication. Right. That is the problem that underlies no matter how genius the system is.
Okay, so Monero gets rid of all that. There is no tracking of any transaction. So now you just are a fan of Monero, not Bitcoin. I mean, it's that simple.
Does Monero use the internet to do a transaction?
So does everything. How do you get?
That's my point, Jeran.
Okay, but do you use dollars today?
Okay, let me take this a different way. I have a car.
Hold on a second.
And I want to go across the country in my car, I don't want anyone to know where I'm going. But my problem is I have to use the freeways that belong to the states.
Okay, but hold on.
It's no different.
You use dollars today, yes? You transact all the time. You buy gas, you buy groceries. Okay, so you use dollars. Okay, and there's huge problems with that. But it doesn't mean that you just say, that's it, I'm putting my foot down, I'm not using dollars. You still transact with it. All this is an introduction of a way to transact that is better than the dollar. It's better for a store of value. It's easier. It's faster. It's more accessible. It's private. It's freedom. all those things are in it, and you're stomping on it and saying, I don't like it for the reasons that I don't like the dollar, but yet you use the dollar.
No, there's bigger reasons why I don't like crypto than the dollar.
Why?
The dollar turned us all into slaves.
Okay.
And they did it in a couple lifetimes. By the time my grandparents were around, that's where it really started to go south quick, based on debt and the dollar.
I hate the dollar.
Crypto is not going to become important in some peer-to-peer measure because the central banks have always controlled commerce, and they will die before they allow control of commerce to slip their grasp. So one of two things has to happen here. The central banking Lord Bufu, lords of everything, have to keel over and die, or they're going to do what they always do. And they're going to make it impossible for anyone else to challenge their system.
And that's when
the people who we don't like running the fiat have crypto, at that moment in time, the human species will have lost more freedom than the entirety of our existence.
Right.
You will need permission to buy a stick of gum, and you will have to verify or own up to every other thing. In other words, go ahead and look for some extra cocaine on a street corner, because at that point, it doesn't happen unless it's okay that it's known. There's no way Bitcoin's ever going to matter, Jeran, because we have central banks. It will matter for people at a low level. It will matter until it starts to dent the GDP, and a lot of people are using it. At which point, the central banks will say, "Guess what, boys? We have controlled commerce in every country that matters for hundreds of years, and you're done." And it could be done so simply. They could outlaw it. They could simply just buy it all and make a bunch of rich people that they don't give a damn about. It could be done any number of ways, but my biggest beef with all of it is it's fantasy. We're entering a damn world where the apple that exists that we need to live is paid for by our imagination. And then our imagination is acted as if it has some intrinsic value.
Well, I mean, if you saw a $100 bill on the ground and a $1 bill, you'd certainly go pick up the 100 first.
Thing is as I picked up the 100, I would know what I was holding, a piece of damn paper.
Right, but you still know whether it has value, whether it's fake or not. You can just because it's fake doesn't mean we just say, "Well, I don't want hundreds anymore. I'm done with money. I'm just giving up." To me, your outlook is
but the 100 is less fake. The 100 is less fake because it exists in the world, and you can put it in your pocket, and there is an occulted aspect of knowing this. So you can put how a human mind views the world.
Bitcoin can exist on your phone. You put your phone in your pocket. What's the difference?
There is no difference. The phone is right next to crypto. Some of the worst ideas ever thought of.
Yeah, but okay, so you have a phone. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is it while these are maybe the worst ideas ever, we have to live in this world. So you have to at least embrace something if it comes along that looks like it might.
I agree. Okay, I agree with that. What we should be looking for is a stable currency that is backed by intrinsic value that never changes its value, which has already been worked out, by the way. Worked out after the 29 crash. There
and why isn't it here? Why isn't it here?
Because the central bank said we can't enslave everybody with that system.
Correct. Exactly. Okay, with Bitcoin, you had somebody who created the same kind of idea that operates outside of the banks. Now,
they don't. No, they don't. This is regulated. As this began to pick up steam,
we already talked about this. It's regulated.
Well, how can you say it's free of a system that's issuing licenses, Jeran?
Because those people are dealing with money, and in this country, to deal with money, you need to have a financial license. So if somebody's going to take cash for Bitcoin, it's no different than if you run a MoneyGram or a Western Union or one of these places. You're going to have to file all these reports and be known to the government so that you don't basically launder money through your organization. That's why they do that. Now again,
Bitcoin is asking permission to exist the moment that these people are getting licensed, and that doesn't change in your description until the dollar goes away.
That's those people's choices. What I'm saying is, if I wanted to start my own business where I'm like, I want to buy and sell Bitcoin to people, right? Well, if I want to exist in this country and I don't want to go to jail for it and I don't want to get taxed, then my only option is to go get licensed for it. That's not saying anything about Bitcoin. That's saying something about me. That's saying that money is so important to me, that trading Bitcoin is so important that I want to go get licensed by the government and operate within their system.
The regulation gives them but the regulatory thing that has just happened there gives them the power to affect the sway of what those people are engaged in.
Sure, but that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. That has to do
But
with
that also gives them the power to say, hey, you guys are breaking the law. We're the licensing board. So all you people who don't have licenses and don't give a shit about the FCC or whoever's doing it, guess what? We're saying this is illegal now. Now
Well,
what?
They already do that. They already do that. I mean, they've arrested
I
many
know.
people for
That's
improper financial. You're running a money exchange business without a license. So yeah. So I get that. But here's my point. I see that will always be that way. It'll always be here. That's what happens when you live in this stupid, country and the government the way it is. You're basically saying because the government is so overbearing in the way that they run the banks and the way that they've enslaved us all, that you're saying anything that ever comes up that's made by people will get smashed down eventually.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
What?
I'm saying where we currently are is where we currently are. And right now we live under the yoke of central banks.
Okay, good. And you said if anything ever rivals them or goes up against them, they will smash.
Now, right now. Yep, until they either die or get their teeth yanked out. Yeah, that's the way it's going to be. And that is why when we turn on the news, every channel says the same thing because they own it all.
We know that. We're on the same page there.
That's how COVID happened.
Right. So how would you kill the central bank? Think about it. How would you kill them? Because guess what? Number one, there's an easy way. If we all stop transacting in dollars tomorrow, the central bank would die. And if there's another coin that we could use or another monetary system, then that would be one way to do it. Now, again, I realize that that's impossible. I'm not even making that claim as like, oh, this is possible, because I get why most people in this country operate in a certain way. They do whatever the news tells them. If the news told them tomorrow that Bitcoin was illegal, half the people who have it would sell it. If the news told everybody we have part canine genes in us, they would all go to, PetSmart and buy some dog food. That's how dumb people are who watch the news. There's people who exist outside the news that want to transact with each other, that want to bank privately, that can use Bitcoin, and it does give them freedom. It's given me freedom. It's given I could have more freedom than I can imagine if I would have just thought like I do now back then. So that's the difference, is that what you guys are saying now is kind of what I was saying in 2013. So in 8 years from now, so give it 2030, when Bitcoin is worth a ton, and it will be, you're going to look back and you're going to feel like I feel right now.
First of all, that's assertion you can never back up. You don't have a crystal ball. It's designed to be true, but that does not make it true.
It's the scarcest asset in the world, okay, that is easily transferred, completely protected. It's private. It goes without any banks. It goes without any central government. And that alone tells me that it will be worth something. How do I know that? Well, because it's always been the same, and it was worth 9 cents in 2011 and $1 in 2012 and 60 in 2000.
We're talking about a thing that's been around for a decade.
Right. Okay. Well,
not a long track record to be making bold statements about the future of a thing.
Well, what I mean is that it's value. I don't mean by dollars either, because it doesn't matter what the dollar is. I mean, the dollar could crash tomorrow. It doesn't matter to me. That's why if somebody says, what's it going to be worth in 20 years? I could never give you that dollar amount. That's ridiculous to me. I don't even know what that is. But it will be worth a Bitcoin. What I mean by that is there's only 21 million. And I don't know why that's hard for people to grasp. There's 7.7 billion people on Earth, and there's an asset out there that there's only 21. So it'd be the same thing if there was 21 million ounces of gold, and that was it. And I was telling you about that, and I said, hey, there's only 21 million. There'll only be 21 million, meaning that there can never be more, and it can't be counterfeited. Now, right now with gold, so easy to counterfeit. People get had on that all the time. You can buy it off eBay. It comes in a little assay case. You put it away, and for 20 years, you'll think it's real. It's not. Okay, so with Bitcoin, it's impossible. You can't have a counterfeited Bitcoin. So there's 21 million. We know that 1 million of them are gone forever, and the fact that it's in those first wallets nobody's ever touched. They're just stuck there. We know that there's an estimate of about 2 to 3 million that's been lost, because this is what happened. The people who had it at the beginning, it wasn't worth anything. If you had 10,000 Bitcoin and they were worth a penny, you didn't care. You threw your computer away. You threw your hard drive away. Now we get to this point, and those people want to kill themselves. But those coins are gone forever. They can never.
And they wouldn't be feeling that way without money, because what they're mad about is the fiat they could have had they still held on to that Bitcoin. There's no separating the value of the two right now.
Not right now, but there is in the fact that, okay, so with Dave Weiss making a bet to me, and he paid me in Bitcoin, we did separate the fiat. There's no fiat involved there. Now, it was a $200 bet, so we said $200, right? instead of 0.001 or whatever the Bitcoin would be. So I get that part. But what I'm saying is I don't need to cash it out, and Dave didn't need to go pay for it to have it. He had it. I had it. He traded to me. He paid me off in a bet for that. So if I want to pay Jason for services rendered, if he's going to come over here and fix my mixer or something, and I pay him in Bitcoin, sending it to him for his value worked, then it becomes a monetary system. It becomes money. But again, as soon as you start thinking, oh, how do I get money for this? How am I going to get cash? Then it becomes something totally different. My problem is to me, it seems like when you're talking about the value of something in the future, I would look, first of all, for something that I know is never going to increase. Okay, so putting $1 or $100 underneath my bed, I know it will never be worth more than it is today. Ever.
Now you're talking my language.
Okay, so we know that. So let's take it step by step. We both know we can't put $100 under our bed. It does nothing. It'll never be worth more. But there is something that you can possibly put under your bed that's $100 today that will be worth more in a little while. And that's, okay, let's say it's Bitcoin. Now you could tell me, but Jeran, it could go down as well. I get that. Okay, it could go down. But so far, what we've seen is if you look at a year-by-year basis, in fact, everybody should set on their alarm right now on their phone, put an alarm for February 10th, 2022, 1 year from today, and check the price of Bitcoin versus today. Okay, and I'll be dead wrong. If it's lower than it is today, then I'll be wrong. I'll tell you why it will not be lower than it is today, because they keep printing money. So if you think about that, even if its value didn't move, it would be worth more dollars because dollars will increase. They're putting more into the system. They're sending out more stimulus checks. So even when that does the opposite to the dollar. If we put $100 under our pillow and they print more money, the $100 under the pillow loses value. When you have something that's an asset like Bitcoin and they print more money, it increases its value. It increases its value. Now, again, you might say, well, the money buys the same thing because they printed more. I get that. I'm just telling you that there's one kind of money in this world that goes one direction, and there's one that goes the complete opposite direction. Everything that Bitcoin is the opposite of the dollar. So it's the opposite. It's completely different. One's got an inflationary set into it. One's deflationary. One is based on debt. One is the complete opposite of debt. There is no debt in Bitcoin. There's no such thing. There's no negatives. There's no negatives in Bitcoin. There's so many things that there's the opposite of the dollar. So when you have 21 million of something, like I said, 3 million's been lost. Okay, there's only been 18.5 released. So you got 18.5 minus 3, 15.5 minus the 1 million that Satoshi has. We're down to 14.5 million coins. What I'm telling people is for something like that, I would do everything in my power if I could to get one. Now I've told people 0.25, but one, to me, if you've got one of something that there's only 14.5 million of in the world, and everybody who's got one considers it an asset because it's got value to them, it has value, it's you can pay commitments, you can pay debts with it to each other, right? Then to me, that seems like a brilliant purchase. I just realized that if I put $10,000, let's say, like I said, Bitcoin's 45,000 today. If I put $45,000 in my closet or in a bank, and I think that will in any way have any chance of ever being useful to my son in 18 years when he turns 18, then I'm wrong. That in 18 years, there's zero chance that $45,000 buys him anything. Maybe it buys him I wouldn't know, what's going to be like in 20 years. Maybe a car, a shitty car. I don't know. Everything goes up in price. Probably 45,000 won't be much. But if that Bitcoin, being the scarcest asset that there is and being something that has intrinsic or not intrinsic, but something that's an asset and people consider it to have value, and that has a chance of being worth something more than it is now, then I don't see a problem with buying it, storing it, especially when you can do so privately. I mean, there's no way for me to store $45,000 somewhere privately. Now, I could put it in my attic, put it in my floorboards, and it'd be a bunch of cash. That's true. But I need to recognize.
I'll make a prediction, Jeran. I just looked at the charts for Bitcoin value. There's a bubble going on right now. I predict that in the next few months, that bubble's going to pop. Looks like it happened before in 2017 when the value jumped to about 19,500-ish was the big jump in 2017. These bubbles, when you see these charts, like I've looked at them on fiat and silver and gold, I predict that the bubble will pop. Now, am I right? I could be wrong, but my experience with all these other forms of volatile currencies that don't retain their value, when they leap up like this, this is how people get in trouble. They go for the pie in the sky. It is a little different, as you keep pointing out, with the limited resources and what it takes to acquire more.
Here's what I'm saying is that when I'm talking about putting Bitcoin away for my son in 20 years, is if I think of everything as a bubble, then and I think about selling and I think about how I'm going to make a profit, that's gambling. That's not what I'm doing. I'm talking about securing an asset for the future. Meaning, if it is a bubble and it pops tomorrow and it goes down to 23,000, I still know that in 18 years it's going to be worth more than I bought it for. And you can't say that.
You don't know that. There's no way to know that. That's not a factual statement that can be backed up with logic. It's just not, man.
If there's only 21 million of an asset.
You don't know if Bitcoin's going to exist till the end of 2021, for that matter, or the end of this week.
Sure, I don't know, but when you looked at the last 10 years or 11 years or 12 years and nobody's even come close to touching it, why would I ever make an assumption it won't be here at the end of this year? That would be an absolute insane prediction.
I'm not making the assumption. What I'm saying is there's no way you can look that many years in the future and be assured that there will be more value than you currently hold on a thing.
Well, look, guys, we're way over.
The United States may not even exist then.
Yeah, well, there you go.
What does that have to do with Bitcoin?
Well, you might need a computer to plug into a wall somewhere.
The United States isn't in control of computers. There'd be other countries you could go to.
But they are kind of in control of the food supply and our ability to move around. So if we do the loincloth thing for a while, it might be hard to use Bitcoin.
That's true. If they take everybody's computer down, we have a lot bigger problems is what I'm saying. If, let's say, like I said, if I put the 10,000 under my bed or whatever and the internet goes down, it's not really going to be much better than if it's on my phone or if it's in Bitcoin.
Oh, wow, Jason. We are way over, and I got an episode to get out by midnight. I'll tell you what, Jeran, we can agree to disagree. I'm with you, I think, and I hope you cash in big. I really do, truly do.
Well,
but for me, the way that I've valued out my personal existence, Bitcoin will never be viewed as an asset, nor will anything digital, ever. To the point, well, I won't get into it. We're way over. But go ahead, Jason. I didn't realize we were that far over.
Right. Well, there's a topic I'd really like to get to, and it's not just about Bitcoin itself, but about cryptocurrencies in general. And how does this tie in with the transhuman movement? Because we know that that's the direction the people at the top want to take things, that they're all about becoming these digital gods, and this is where Wayne can probably chime in on some stuff. I just want to know, from the way things are right now, what could be done with them to tie this in with the transhumanist movement?
You have a wallet in your head.
Well, things are definitely going that way. Wayne, what do you think?
Wayne bailed.
Oh, did he drop off?
Yeah, he had. He said something came up. Looking Skype.
Oh, I haven't been watching the Skype chat. That's a bummer. Well, Jeran, do you know anything about it that we could talk about there before we sign off?
I mean, I just separate the two completely, but I mean, I recognize that everything is going digital. We saw that a while back, and there is no stopping that, whether we want to or not. I mean, somebody could have fought email when it came out, and it's too bad that everybody's used email at this point. And you could have fought putting photos online, and you could have fought using a phone, and you could have fought loading videos and all these things. But most people have realized that those things are coming regardless. There's no way to stop that. So the next logical thing would have had to been money. And now, again, they did it early with the money that they've created. And they had to have some sort of protection for it. So they used banks, right? The bank is in charge of making sure you are who you say you are, and that you, when you deposit, it is your account, and that when you withdraw, it is you. So that's how they control that. So digital money was just something that was a pipe dream for a little while, because they said it's too easy to copy, too easy to counterfeit, and too easy to hack. Somebody came along, said, hey, maybe this will work, and it's gone off from there. So leaving that alone, when you're talking about the transhumanist movement, to me, it's this idea of, the Neuralink, the Elon Musk, this whole we can control you from inside your mind, and we can put these blockchain inserts in the vaccines and things like that. And all that stuff is definitely a direction that they can go. I'm sure that they can already do embeddable tattoos or ink tattoos, or, kind of like a barcode on your skin, and you become nothing more than this cyborg kind of slave. I think that all that stuff is what they want to go towards. I think it's fantasy to think that we will ever upload consciousness to a computer of any kind like that. I think it's something they want to.
This is something we've talked about, actually. Consciousness, no, but they are convinced that they can duplicate data. As
You
in
mean like
they can
by memories or something?
well, they could do like brain tapes is a term that was used in the old cyberpunk era.
Oh. Can't
But
they already do that?
well, wouldn't surprise me, to be honest with you. I mean, this Neuralink thing is getting there. What I'm kind of getting at here is, do you see this technology the way it stands right now? And it's fine for what it's being used for. I totally see both of your point of views. It really all depends upon the circumstances, and that's what it comes down to. I always try and look at things from the most common sense point of view. Right now, Bitcoin and other cryptos can work as you're saying, Jeran. They can, and they do. That's no problem.
Yeah, mhm.
What I'm kind of
No,
curious
I
about is
think
where
that's
is this
why
going
I
to
see-
go?
I see, Crow's Point big time, and the reason why is because I was in that place for a while. Even though as a writer, I was writing about it, and even as a writer, I saw problems with it, and I said, "Oh, this is a problem. This is a problem. Oh, hackers are going to use it. Oh, it's not safe. Oh, it's not going to grow in value." So I had all the same beefs.
But none of those things are my beef
Right.
at
So you're
all.
No, and if your beef is simply that anything that ever comes is going to be squashed, and your thing is you just don't want to ever deal with digital money, even though I'm sure you have an ATM card and I'm sure you have a credit card, so you've already adopted some digital end of this, to just stomp your foot on this one for no reason other than I don't really know.
Well, first of all, I have a degree in internet technology, and secondarily, I would say this. In 2013, I wrote the About page on crow777radio.com.
Mm-hmm.
It was blatantly clear to me where we were headed and what was going to happen. So in 2013, that was well before the censorship had hit us. And there I am. The page is still there. Anyone can go look at it, written in 2013, predicting that the totality of what we're about to head into was based on whether we could have free speech or not. My main beef is wrapped up in this, and some people may get it, some people may not. There's an old story that's told that when the Indians first were approached and white guys wanted to take pictures with them, they said, "Don't take my picture, you're stealing part of my soul." There's where my beef is. What the Indians were actually trying to communicate doesn't translate so easily into English, but what they were trying to communicate is the truest frickin' thing you will ever be told, and we've lost track of it. The movie The Gods Must Be Crazy, the opening of that movie is a good explanation between the Bushmen and what we did, what we all did. I'm interested in getting back. I'm not interested in coming here 1,000 more times. I'm not interested in all these things. That is my beef. And it's not per se with value or hackability or any other thing. It's with what a human being can be. And that's all based in reality. And everything digital is a frickin' fugazi from my point of view.
No, and that's true. I mean, I can't even disagree with that statement. The difference is that if there's any way that I could ever do something today to help me in the future, I would like to take advantage of that if possible. And I don't mean help as far as I don't ever want to be rich. I don't ever want to be, have some big, property and all these. I just want to be comfortable. I just want to not have to worry this month about how I'm going to make enough to live next month.
I'm with you. I'm with you. We're in hard times, and when you're poor, it's the only thing that matters, right?
Absolutely. And I told people before, I would never recommend somebody. Let's say you've got a bunch of money in savings, $45,000 in savings. I would never recommend that you ever go buy a Bitcoin because, like Crow said, it could be gone tomorrow. So all I'm trying to get across to people is if there is some money that you feel like you're wasting in your life, and there was in my life, that maybe it was, going out here or there, going to a movie, whatever it was.
Extra cocaine.
Yeah, extra cocaine. Little top off for the end of the week. No, at the end of, if you're doing that, and at the end of the week you've got $20 or $30 or $50, I don't think there's a problem with saying, hey, you know what I'm going to do for a while is I'm just going to put that away in Bitcoin just because there's a chance. And here's the other way of looking at it. This is why I don't even know. If you ask me how much I own right now, I would say I don't know. Because when I buy it, I send it to a wallet and I never look at what's in that wallet. And there's a reason, because I don't want to look at it and say, oh, I've got, 0.6 Bitcoin, let's say, or whatever. And when the price drops next week or something happens, I don't want to say, oh, I just lost $4,000. I don't want to think of it that way. I have 0.6 Bitcoin. Doesn't matter what the price goes to, I've got 0.6 Bitcoin. In my mind, when you're looking down the road at something that's a scarce asset, if it maintains like it has been and it continues to not be hacked, that I think that value will go up. That's all that my point is that by putting it away, not paying attention to the price, when it drops, I don't have to think I just lost this much or I just made this much. All I think to myself is, oh, hopefully that rebounds, right? I mean, if I saw the price go to 20,000 tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, hopefully that comes back up, which I think it would. And so by doing that, it's the only way that I can ever possibly even imagine me doing something today that's a small kind of gesture, small little activity that has a potential of down the road. And how do I know that? Simply because if I would have thought the way I'm telling you right now in 2013, I could be retired today. The problem was I didn't think that way. In fact, I thought like a gambler does. I've watched that guy, Robert Kawasaki, a bunch of times talk, and he's really taught me that our problem, and this is how they keep us enslaved, is they teach us to think about things like an employee and to think about things like a gambler, to where if we ever buy something for $200 and its value goes to 400, we sell. We're so happy to make that $200 because it's 200 more than we had, and we feel very good about that. That's what keeps people poor, is a small-minded mindset of, I'm going to buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, and it went up to 2,000, I'm going to cash out. Does nothing for your life, did absolutely zero for you, didn't do anything. If people who get rich think large scale, they go buy a property for $50,000 that's 10 miles outside of town, and everybody looks at him like, this idiot, would he pay $50,000 for that property? And then 11 years down the road, that town is expanded, and now all of a sudden there's some grocery store that's willing to buy that property for $13 million. That person just got rich because they thought ahead. My problem is I don't make enough money to think ahead at all. I don't make any money. I barely have enough money to pay my bills each month. But at the end of the month, if I've got an extra $100 and I've got options of what I can do, I can go buy something I don't need. I can take my wife somewhere. There's not a lot of things I can do with it. Nothing's going to give me any return. However, there is something as of right now that I can put that $100 in that maybe in 20 years, there's a payoff for it that I'll look back and say, wow, I'm really happy I did that. I'm at a place today where I look back in 2013 and I'm like, fucking idiot. Why didn't I think ahead long term? I didn't need to live off that Bitcoin. I could have worked at McDonald's, could have worked at Taco Bell and made minimum wage and been able to support myself and my wife. And with just 9 years down the road, or actually 2013 now, 8 years down the road, I could be retired, have $2 million and be in fine shape. I could even go cash out at a place that's financially controlled. And when the government says, oh, you made $2 million, we're going to tax you, $400,000. Here's your $400,000. I'm taking my 1.6 and I'm going to go buy a house and I'm going to live comfortably the rest of my life. The only thing I needed to do to make that decision was to think ahead of time, think long term, rather than, ooh, I doubled up. So there's a lot of people in Bitcoin right now that think that way. They think they're going to buy in at 45,000, and when it gets to 90,000, they're going to double up. That's fine. If you want to do that, go ahead. I'm just telling people there's other options. There's ways that you can put money in a wallet that nobody knows is yours, that you can keep forever. You can pass on to your children, and you can make it a college fund. Don't send them to college, like a college fund. Anyway, it's all a matter of like looking long term. Now, again, Crow's right. It could be in 5 years, boom, the government comes, squashes it, somehow turns off the internet or whatever. And if that happens, I'll be able to look at it. I'll be like, well, I gave it a shot, and I don't even know how much money I lost. And it wasn't that much. I was spending $25, $50 a month, putting money into Bitcoin, putting it into this wallet. And so I spend it as if it's gone. That's the way I buy Bitcoin. As soon as I buy it, I don't even look at the price, buy it, throw it to that wallet, and it's gone. I pretend like I lost it. And my hope is down the road in 20 years, maybe I can look back and be like, finally, I made a good decision for myself and my family. And if I didn't, well, I get shit on by life quite often. And this would just be another one of those instances. But there's just not a lot of other ways I've ever seen a possibility of getting ahead. I know that I'll never put money in a bank and it will make any money for me. I realize what, Jason, I think you and I were talking about the other day, where I realized what people with money can do. It's so easy. I mean, if you had $1 million and you bought a coin that today's $1 and it went up to $1.06 tomorrow, you could sell and you made $60,000.
Hey, let's talk about that for a second, because what it was is I sent you a message, and I said, this almost seems too easy, but could you, hypothetically, find a coin that looks like it people might actually give a shit about it, buy it, let's say it's a penny right now, buy it for a penny, I take $1,000, buy it for a penny, it goes up to 2 cents, did I just double my money minus the transaction fees? Hypothetically, the answer is yes, but you have to know what it is to look for in the first place.
Well, then again, I think just what you described is exactly what I'm saying is the problem. That's working like a gambler. That's somebody trying to go double their money at a casino. It will not change your life. It will not make a difference today. It will not make a difference tomorrow. I mean, sure, you'll have an extra $1,000. You'll be able to go on a vacation and buy a hotel or something. But what I'm talking about is an opportunity to have a store of value that can increase exponentially.
Oh, I agree with you.
down-
The reason why I was asking that was, do these things happen? Like I was
All the
trying
time.
to learn about
All
crypto in general.
Well,
I was more like a hypothetical. Like, is that do these things happen that often,
They-
or was
but
was
not-
Bitcoin kind of the
no.
rare one?
No, there is that happens a lot, but I mean, not like so a coin that's a penny would not have the kind of liquidity that you could go spend $1 million on it, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not enough for sale. That's why as soon as you start buying it too, it's probably going to drop the price a little bit. So with Bitcoin, yeah, sure, you could buy $1 million worth, but some coins there just wouldn't be that kind of liquidity. But if you're talking about 1,000, yeah, sure, of every coin possibly out there, you could buy 1,000 today, and it would be the timing. You'd have to get the timing right. And again, many people kind of get scared. So if you bought $1,000 worth at 5 cents, and then the next day it went down to 2.5 cents, you'd like flip and be like, oh, I better cash out and just suck up my losses. A lot of people do that. They don't realize, well, there's a chance that comes back. Give it some time. Give it a year. Give it 2 years. And Crow was right when I said that if anybody lost money, it's because of them selling. He's right though. People have lost money with Mt. Gox. People have sent it to the wrong address. People have lost passwords. People have given it to scam artists.
Bubble has popped. 2017, a bubble popped. I'm predicting that what you see right now is a bubble. I predict this will pop too.
Okay, but look at the price in 2017 and tell me if it's worth more today. So then when the bubble pops today, then talk to me in 2024 when it's way higher than it is. So bubbles pop.
No, I agree with you, but that's not the issue. The issue is that the price fluctuates at all for me. We're just playing a game at that point.
But what difference does it make if the price is better in 3 years?
The difference is made because when I go out to the field and I see a tree, I know the value of that tree was the same on the day it became a tree and on the day it stops being a tree. That's why it matters, and that's what we've lost track of. And so I get that we need retirements, and I get that people are getting older and they're worried, how am I going to exist? I get all that, and I don't take umbrage with anyone who wants to get some Bitcoin. But for me, it goes beyond that. At the point where I didn't have to be worried about being dirt poor all the time, I quit caring about money. Yeah, if you don't believe me, ask Jason.
Because I would agree with you. If I ever had that happen to me, then I would be in the same boat.
Well, my benchmark's not high. Pay my bills and my rent and have some food. There's my benchmark.
I've got an extremely low benchmark, very, very low. And that's the same thing. If my rent was paid and my bills were paid and that's it, I would be ecstatic. I'm not there. I've got to work for all that, right? But I mean, once you, I don't know, like I said, I would like opportunities to get to a point, especially when you do what we do. We don't have 401k. We don't have retirement, right? So I do think, Crow, if somebody came to you and said, hey, if you buy this thing for $10,000 today, there is a potential that in 20 years you can do quite a lot with that. And if they were to, I realize that nobody would ever be able to give you that assurance, right? There's no way that you could ever be assured that that was true. But I think if you looked into Bitcoin, you would realize that there's nothing else that even comes close.
That's not true. Silver, easy schmeezy. You can know the amount that's being mined in the world. You can know it's one of the main things in technology. You can know that currently we experience ongoing inflation. So that is a much safer deal because there's intrinsic value regardless of what happens. But the point is we also know places like China have cornered the technology market. So they're going to have to try to hoard all those resources. You can look up right now how much silver was mined in the world. So the bet on silver, if you're going to hold a thing for like retirement, I don't understand how you choose one over the other unless it was just about volume.
Well, look at if you have $10,000, see what $10,000 in silver would have done in 2005 versus today, and look what $10,000 in Bitcoin would do in 2005 versus today, and you'll realize
you'd be pretty rich because in 2005 silver was probably down. I'd have to look, but below $12, I think, and right now it's above 30.
Yeah, it was about $12.
So you're talking about doubling your money, and think about when Bitcoin was $2,000 in 2018. If you just bought Bitcoin then $10,000 worth, you would have 5 times that today. Right now,
so you've had two real big bubble spikes in the existence that I saw on the chart. One was in 2017, went up to 19,005, and then bottomed out quickly. So a lot of people got hurt there. And the other thing I would mention is my feeling about the bubble that's currently. If you look at the trajectory of the graph, it almost certainly corresponds with the year 2020, and that too is artificial.
So where I'm confused though is when you say a lot of people got hurt. So for instance, if people bought today at 45,000, right? So a couple people buy at 45,000.
Because as it's exactly what you said, as it starts to climb, they get, pies in their eyes and they start buying at a high price.
Yeah, but to be
Because it's
fair,
climbing,
Crow, that
climbing.
could be
But I'm
true
saying-
of oil speculation or stocks.
It is.
It's
true
all
of
it's all
oil
the same
speculation.
thing, really, because
Right,
it's
casino.
being viewed as a day trading kind of thing, and that's all. And you can get burned on anything that you invest in, and then it goes south. Or if you're
Right.
like the elite,
45,000.
you can buy whatever the fuck you want because you've
And
got
hold.
trillions and hold on and wait because you're going to manipulate the market anyway. But that's beside the point.
Yeah,
But
actually,
wait.
the elite don't risk, though. There's no risk for the elite at that level. There's risk for us. We play in casinos.
Right, but I'm just saying in general, like taking out the fact that they manipulate things. If you can play the long game, like Jeran was saying earlier, and this isn't about Bitcoin, this is about anything. If something is like Coca-Cola or Apple computers, like the kinds of things that always are going to have some kind of value in modern society as it stands now, anyway. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. So if you're just looking to day trade, even if your day trading is every 3 months or so, you can still get your ass handed to you with bad decisions. And
Yes.
the coin thing is still the same
Well,
concept.
the majority of people do, or else everyone would be rich.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
pretty
simple
yeah, exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
trying to teach a new way of thinking. I'm trying to tell people that we don't need to think like that. And if you do, you can think like that. You certainly can do whatever you want. But if you do, you'll always be in the position you are today. That's all. That you're never going to change your world. And the only reason that Bitcoin even is like on my radar now is because I saw what happened to me and I realized my mistake. My mistake was simply thinking on a very limited basis, not thinking ahead and doubting the technology behind Bitcoin. The doubts that I had about it have been corrected by people's innovations. And that slaps me across the face because it's not government innovations. It's not bullshit that they've done. It's actual people like you and I.
You don't know who created it.
I do know. What do you,
Isn't it going to be an eye-opener if you find out that Satoshi was a central bank agent?
what difference does that make? He wrote a white paper and made a code that I can read. I don't understand what you mean. What could possibly be in the code that would matter that he worked for the banks?
Just that it could go belly up, that they could turn it off, like something like that. I know what Crow's getting at.
Or
because
or
it's an
maybe
intangible
that the
thing.
central banks have the cleverest mofos in the world with frickin' IQs that can't even be measured by standard charts. So the idea that you and I, smoking pot half our lives, are going to figure out their long game is
Oh, well, that wasn't
laughable. If
No,
you
and
found out they were central agents of the bank, they would have been doing that for a reason. And
Right.
the lie of
It was
Satoshi.
just
would
me.
become
If it was up
clear.
to me to read the code and me to understand it, then I wouldn't make those claims. The thing is, everybody can read it. All the companies out there that are innovating off Bitcoin.
That's not what I'm given to understand.
What do you mean? How do you think they're writing code for it? How do you think they're? How do you think?
Just like a week ago, I had this conversation with people who are in gold markets who accurately predicted the fall of fiat to 2020, who were saying that the Bitcoin, the source code that created it, only something like 15% has been expressed in the public. I'll look to see if I can get more on it, and I'll send
Syntax,
it to you. Yeah.
If I found that out, then I would sell what I have. I would get out. If you're talking about if there's a chance that they could have just written in the code that all the coins will be transferred to somebody else on some date, I just realized that there's nobody else who would be doing anything with Bitcoin if that were true. None of these companies would be in it. They would all be out. The reason that people are getting involved and the reason people are innovating is because they can read the paper and they agree with it. They agree with the code. People coding around it. I know a guy that's coded a coin himself. It didn't do real well, but he was able to create his own coin. He was the first one to come up with smart
Kind of
contracts.
reminds me of the PC thing, Jared. We all used PCs for years and years and years till we find out that the government mandated a backdoor be written into every operating system.
Yes.
These are, you can think you know what you know, but when it starts on a lie, and you could argue it's not a lie, but in my eyes it's a lie. If you're not going to identify who created this thing that's become important, I have a problem. And it's a problem that's not going away from me. You invented a name, you don't take ownership of it, you surreptitiously hand off this code whether or not you knew the guy. I'm not buying into that. When a car is made in our world, you know who the engineer was, you know who his team was, you know what color it is. There's something you can have a little bit of faith in.
And if he wasn't, if you didn't know about him, but you were able to look at the entire blueprints of that car, then it wouldn't matter to me who made the car.
It would matter to me because I know that there are people that are infinitely smarter than I will ever be. And I am not a vindictive person who figures out traps for people. So I'm probably not very good at undermining a trap that's been set for me because my mind doesn't work in that way.
Yeah,
But
I'm
if you get a dark genius that's dead set on hosing everybody, I'm just saying,
No,
if it's not above board and in the light of day, then from the get-go, I've already got issues. But I would urge you again, read my about page on Crow 777 Radio. I wrote that in 2013, and then go look up when censorship hit us. I'm pretty good at reading where the tea leaves are going to take us, and it's all based on one simple idea. Corporation can never just sit the hell down and shut up and make money. They always got to go further. And when they've gone too far, guess what? They got to go further. That's the rule of life. Yeah.
If we would have had this conversation in 2010, and you would have been saying the same things, and then today came along and we were having this conversation, I hope you'd recognize that you wouldn't have the same opinion. So because you're looking at it now, you have one opinion, but you haven't looked at.
That's not true. I looked at it from the onset of when it came around. I've actually known people. Jason has a common friend of mine that's very good at making money, and he made decent money in crypto.
Mm-hmm. In 2010, are you saying you would have guessed that it would be worth $45,000?
I would have said crypto's a terrible idea, and anything digital that further infiltrates our lives as our main operating options is a terrible idea. And it's not just because
I would not to be upset, but if I listened to you in 2010 and you said all that, and then I came to today and realized, oh shit, I could have gotten rich and retired and been happy with my family and been really comfortable and been able to do all these shows I do for free and be able to do tests because I could have paid for them. And then I look back and I'm like, why did I listen to Crow when he told me crypto is going to be nothing? When 10 years later,
I didn't say that it's going to be nothing. I said it's a terrible idea. There's a big difference there.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of things that are terrible ideas. I mean, that we still can use. I mean, there's still a gun is a terrible idea, but there's times when you're going to need one. You might need one. I think it's a good thing when somebody breaks into my house. But I'm just saying that sometimes you have to look at things and say, okay, well, what is the hurt here? What could possibly happen? And when I look at that, if there was somebody who coded it backdoor, the government was involved, or the central banks, they wouldn't create something that I could have wrote a couple articles about in 2013 and in 2020 have become a multimillionaire. Why would they do that? When have they ever done that?
They don't care if multimillionaires are made. They make them and break them left and right. It's a numbers game. As long as the majority of people struggle to meet the basic requirements, then they are winning. But what's going on now is they're getting everyone on the government tit with all their free handout money.
Absolutely.
And their idea that, maybe we'll just give people universal income.
Right.
That's just slavery by a different name, isn't it? You want bread this year, do what we say, or you won't get your check.
And I'm trying to prevent that. So that's what I'm trying to stay away from. Is I know already when I make
can't be done with crypto from my point of view. But I got to get going here, guys.
Me too.
I'm already late getting the episode out.
All right, it was fun. Let me, call me back if you guys ever want to talk more. If you get that code that says 15%, I would love to see that. And I get your opinion, and we can agree to disagree. And and I won't be in that worse of shape if in 10 years that money I've been putting in it goes away. I'll say, oh, you were right, Crow. And if it doesn't go that way and it goes the other way, I think owning a certain percentage of the most scarce asset there is will pay off. We'll see. Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. That's a fact.
Well, interesting conversation, guys, for sure. Thank you so much. I know, Jeran, I didn't intend for this to be this way, but it kind of turned into a defensive thing from your point of view, and you definitely took that really well. I kind of wanted to get into more of the whole blockchain thing as a technology in general, not just focus specifically on Bitcoin. Unfortunately, we didn't go there, so maybe we can do this again. But one of my big things that I'm very much interested in besides social engineering is transhumanism, and I think that the blockchain technology as a whole has a lot to do with the transhumanist movement that these people are pushing for. So maybe we could talk about that again at some point in the future.
Yeah, it'd be good to hear your thoughts, because I do think the blockchain is something that, we're 5 years away from every single person being pretty connected to that blockchain. So again, can that be used for bad? Yeah, of course. They're going to bring the Internet of Things, and they're going to hook everything up, and they're going to know exactly how much you weigh and how much you have in the fridge, and you're going to get social credit points for doing certain things. That's all going to happen, and they are going to intertwine all these things. I think, though, in order for those things to take place that we know is going to happen, the Internet's going to stay here. So to go the route of I don't like Bitcoin because of the Internet and they could shut it down and who's in charge of it, well, we have to look at the way things are trending. What is trending is this idea of turning everything onto the Internet and being able to use the Internet no matter where you're at, and every phone and every smartwatch and smart band and Fitbit. So if that's the way we're going, then the use of digital currencies will become easier. It'll flow better. You will be able to use Bitcoin at a grocery store. You will be able to use it to get your hair cut. We're 5 years away from that in my mind. And again, these are all predictions. I could be wrong. Where am I getting those predictions from? Simply because I remember my thinking process back in 2013, and I've changed that thinking process when it comes to Bitcoin, only because the people messing with it are people like you and I. They're just people who are trying to make it better. I've seen some of the wallets that have come out, very nice. Looked into some of these companies and seen what they're about. They're just people that are developing and building off of existing structures. So the transhumanist movement is definitely going to come. They're trying to bring it. Blockchain will definitely assist in all that because it's a record of everything. So you would know, you'd be able to look at the blockchain. It'll probably tell you every block you've been on and every store you went into and what time you went in. And yeah, I'm against all those things, absolutely. But because Bitcoin is built with a blockchain and it maybe started the blockchain and a lot of these coins are based on it, I don't just immediately put it into a evil basket. If it can be utilized and if I don't see terrible things with these ideas that we'll be able to transfer consciousness and you'll be able to live forever. And I think that's all horseshit. But, can you make a digital file that can't be hacked, that can be passed from me to you without a central bank that's a store of value? I do think that's possible. I think that it's been coded, and I think it's called Bitcoin.
What I see happening, especially with all the nonsense from the past year now, because, yep, we're almost at a year now, folks, that they have convinced dipshits to wear diapers on their faces and that everyone's going to die, even though they're not.
2 diapers now.
2 diapers now, maybe 3. Could be 3.
Maybe 3.
But here's what I see coming if things don't change in some way, shape, or form. This technology is probably going to get all incorporated into a single digital ID that everyone's going to have to use. Kind of like the Bible would say, like a buy and sell kind of thing. And I'm not a biblical person, but I see that.
Can I tell you one real quick? One company that's come along that's caused problems in Bitcoin, and I do see this happening. And there's going to be more of this. You just have to be careful where you go. PayPal has announced that they're going to now start dealing in Bitcoin, but they're doing it in a very tricky manner, which is you don't actually own the Bitcoin. So, for instance, let's say I have 45,000 in my account today, right? And I told PayPal, hey, I want to buy 1 Bitcoin. Okay, so PayPal says, all right, you have 1 Bitcoin in your account. If I tried to pull that out, they would only give me the $45,000. They wouldn't give me the 1 Bitcoin. So from there, now if I want to spend Bitcoin at places and transfer it, I can. And at the very end, whatever Bitcoin's worth, they're going to give me the cash out. The problem with that is if you really think about it, they don't have to own. They're floating Bitcoin. They're doing kind of the same thing.
Because they have the cash to do so.
That's exactly what I said when I was using the Saudi example. They're holding possession. So if a bunch of corporations did that, they would in fact control Bitcoin. And with the 51% rule, since we know all corporations play,
no, the 51%.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, the 51% is miners, that's the people mining it. But what I do agree with what he's saying is that, if you don't pay attention. So, for instance, if you just listen to PayPal who says, come get your Bitcoin here, and you go spend your Bitcoin there, and then but they do this thing, it's called your keys, your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What it means is that if you have the private keys, it's your Bitcoin. When you send money to PayPal and they give you a Bitcoin, ask PayPal for the private keys, and they're going to laugh at you, and they're going to be like, no, you don't own the Bitcoin, we do. So what they're basically doing is floating money to you, and I don't know if that necessarily
maintaining control of the Bitcoin.
But they don't even need to necessarily have it, is what I'm saying.
That's the point. Then why do they do it? Because they're big, and so they'll end up holding a crap load of Bitcoin.
And they'll make money off of it. But that's the real, because they're always cashing it out. Meaning, right? If you had 45,000 and then you spent half a Bitcoin, so now you're down to 0.5, and you say, I want the 0.5 out, they'll just give you half of what you bought it for. So they've got this way now of basically owning Bitcoin, making money off of it, loaning it out to people at the price that they want to buy it for, 45,000 today if you were to buy it from PayPal, but they really don't have to own it all. They don't even have to
I don't
have.
want to state the obvious, but what you just described is PayPal hacking Bitcoin.
It's not hacking. It's just, I could do that. So imagine
Yeah, it
I
is.
told.
It's undermining the way the system was intended, and
Well,
since they're so big and have so much money, they
Yep.
could potentially end up holding
That's
a
just
crap
it.
load of
That's
Bitcoin.
just it. Yeah, the
And that's
Bitcoin
my-
isn't being
my point
hacked,
is
but
not-
someone with a large amount of money can manipulate the system. They can game it in their favor. That's what's going on.
That's a hack. That's
Well,
a hack.
right. It's not a hack in the software side of it, but it's them manipulating the system.
So, I mean, it would be the same as, let's say I've got only 5 Bitcoin, but I tell 10 people, hey, give me 45,000 each, and you'll each own a Bitcoin.
You know what
So
it's like,
they all
Jeran?
do-
It's like people holding paper for gold. It's very
Yeah,
similar
same.
to that.
Same-
You
Right.
don't have that gold,
Same.
and they could fuck you if they wanted to.
Right. And here's the thing about that, though, is that it's not there's no problem I'm talking about that's Bitcoin's problem. That is PayPal's problem and the people who use them. That's not, Bitcoin doesn't have, there's nothing that can be coded against that. Like I just said, I could make that announcement. Hey, come pay me for Bitcoin. I'll give you, and then when you want to spend it, I'll
Yeah,
send
but
it
you
for
don't
you.
have a gazillion dollars, so you'd end up holding a Bitcoin or two. PayPal will end up holding a crap load of it.
Right. That's just a giant bank doing what giant banks do, and that's sticking a great big green dick up our ass. That's it.
So if you are somebody who wants to get into Bitcoin, don't go through PayPal. That's not, you're not helping the system at all. You're actually helping them make money, and you are just spending Bitcoin instead of spending money. Now you're directly tying money to Bitcoin by design. You don't need to do that. So anyway, there's companies like that are going to try to come on. I know that I think Visa announced recently they're going to start getting into Bitcoin. So it's going to come around, and all it's going to be is people borrowing off of it. They're going to try and do whatever they can to get a piece of it.
Yeah.
So this is what they always.
But anyway,
200 and
I don't want to keep us on here any
200
longer.
Some CEOs changed chairs right before 2020, and part of that was they were all going to play together. But go ahead, Jason.
Well, that's probably part of the Great Reset. Now that they started talking about that afterwards, I see that as things were going on behind the scenes that we just don't know the details of. But anyway, and we're way over time, and I appreciate everybody being here. I hope they enjoyed the conversation. But this is where I am concerned that I see everything going, and I don't think I'm wrong. That this technology has now been proven to work. You cannot hack it for all intents and purposes. So it'll probably start getting funneled down into a digital identification per individual, so that everything, because a blockchain works by a ledger and everything is recorded. So did you get your vaccine? Did you do this? Did you do that? It's all going to go down to a single unit that every person in this Great Reset, which is going to be the global governance or whatever the hell you want to call it, that's where they're trying to take us to, just like they always were. All the crap that crazy-ass Alex Jones screamed about so badly 15 years ago, we're seeing it happen last year and this year. They're putting the pieces in place now and saying, guess what? We're doing the Great Reset. Fuck you.
I agree. And I think what they're doing that from is the idea of Bitcoin, but I don't think they're using Bitcoin for that, because there's too many things
No.
built
I don't
into
think Bitcoin
built
seems to
into
be specifically it. I think the technology was being tested, and now they know it works. That may not even have been the plan in the beginning, but the blockchain technology is a proven effective solution for what they
want. It will
want.
work so good for universal income. It'll work great for if you want an extra $600 a month. You just need to make sure you get vaccinated, because it will go right into the blockchain. They'll be able to see. So yeah, they'll be able to track everything you've done. You'll get points for being on the internet. If you get thumbs up from Twitter, you'll get more points and more money.
Wouldn't it be ironic if they invented Bitcoin just to inject blockchain, which nobody seemed to feel needed patenting or trademarking, which typically what happens with a good idea? Just saying, it sure would be ironic if Bitcoin was there just to do that.
Well, I don't
Do
think
you
it's just
understand
Bitcoin, because it's.
You keep saying that, but open source would not be patented. I don't understand why you keep
I'm
comparing.
talking about blockchain and the other things that came along and became so prevalent as
Yeah, they're
Bitcoin
open
did.
source. They're
Open source has been around since the beginning of everything. That's
Okay.
nothing new.
So open source things are not patented.
We were talking about the blockchain, which permanently ledgers out data.
Correct.
Right?
Open source.
So what
idea.
I'm saying is, wouldn't it be ironic if Bitcoin came around to inject an idea that they were going to use for other nefarious things, like Jason was just pointing
possibly.
out, putting
Yeah.
your passport in a blockchain and your inoculation record.
Yeah, that's what I see this being used for
Would
in the long run.
Would they release something that would enrich people and be completely separate from banking just to get a blockchain out there? I'm not sure. They've used banking to control this country forever. So
Well, it's changing now, though, because their fiat can't be propped anymore, but they're not going to lose control. And
No.
what you just told me about PayPal, I had no idea.
Yeah, look at
That
what PayPal's
amounts to
doing.
control. That's what it amounts to.
Well,
banks
what we
always-
know is
what banks always.
with this great
Sure.
reset, they know what they're doing. If it's a collapse, it's a controlled collapse, just like 9/11. It's a controlled demolition of the economics. These people don't make these kind of mistakes. We're the ones who make mistakes. They know what they're doing, and that's that.
I got to punch out here, dudes. Jeran, it was awesome to speak with you, and I
Thank you, bro.
sincerely hope you make coin on the coin.
Thank you.
And by the way, everybody, I just released 295. It's posted. Jason, I'll probably do the video tomorrow because it's late.
All right, in 295, Crow. Let's take 2 seconds just to talk about it, and then we'll sign off.
We have Dr. Bear Lando talking about bioterrain theory, which is another one of those common sense, no-brainer based in nature things that one has to wonder how we ended up where we did with medicine, pushing drugs and chemicals all our lives. Basically, bioterrain looks at the makeup of a human body chemically, among other things, and it looks for what's lacking or what's too much, and it tries to bring you back in balance that way. Dr. Berlando is a smart fellow, and we go far afield from bioterrain in hour 2. We talk about things that I very rarely have an opportunity to talk with anyone about. I don't even remember exactly what they were, though. Jason, do you?
We got into a lot of topics, so yeah, very interesting stuff. He talked about how we got into the medical system itself. He talks about how we brought up how the system is gamed from the beginning, how he got out of it. We got into all the beer bug stuff. Yeah, we got pretty deep. But all right, Jeran, in case anyone's has been living under a rock for a very long time, why don't you tell everybody who you are, what you do, and how awesome you are?
Awesome. No, I've just been doing the same thing for a long time. We're obviously heavily censored, and everybody knows that, and shadow banned, and all kinds of fun things like that. So if you're looking for my old videos, go to odyssey.com/@Jeranism. And for everything, my website's the place to start, jeranism.com. And yeah, do a lot of shows throughout the week. And then I also have been doing some of these kind of crypto consultations, just an hour or two with different people who want to get involved. And pretty simple, just show you how to use a wallet, how to spend, how to buy, how to store. So if you're interested in that, you can go to jeranism.com/crypto, I believe. Yes. And that's it.
Cool. And of course, I should be seeing you on Monday.
Thank you very much. Look forward to it.
Every Monday night on TFR from, let's see, I always say Central because that's where I'm at. So 8 to 10 Central on TFR Live. I normally, and Rose too, join Jeran and our mutual friend David Weiss. That's always a fun show. It's actually one of my favorite things I do as far as this kind of thing because it's more relaxing to me and it's like more like a conversation amongst friends and I don't have to do hardcore research. It's just all of us people that I'm very fond of and that we all know what the hell we're talking about. And we just talk about whatever, really, and then we take some phone calls, and it's always a good time. So if you don't know about that, join us on that show every Monday. Thanks, Jeran. I'm sorry I kind of turned into a bit of a debate. I almost felt like I was hosting the presidential debate for a while, but I guess I should have saw that coming because Crow's going to be
I kind of knew it was going to come to. I mean, this is the thing is I get it. I'm in the I'm in the conspiracy community, and I have already seen the kickback from people, and I get it. I mean, how can you tell somebody, you've been telling people forever that everything's a conspiracy, and then all of a sudden here I am saying, well, maybe something isn't. So people are very standoffish of that idea. I get it, and I would be in the same boat if it wasn't for what I've been through so far. And sometimes I think you have to look at the past and see what has happened. And when we look at what's happened with money, and we look at what's happened with the dollar, and we look at all that stuff, we see a clear direction. We see exactly where it's going. When you look at Bitcoin, and if you look at from the beginning till now, well, there is also a direction. It's just the opposite. So does it mean it's always going to go that way? Nope. Does it mean it could fail tomorrow? Sure. But again, if I'm going to bank anything on anything, it's going to be something that has a track record that seems to be trending in the right direction. There's just not a lot of things like that. So again, it's just like Dell computers or Apple computers. I mean, we can look back in hindsight's 2020 and say, oh, I wish I would have bought stock in it at the beginning, right? But you didn't know at the time that Apple was going to be what it was, or Dell was going to be what it was, or these different companies. With Bitcoin, when you can see its performance so far, you can kind of say, hey, maybe this has a chance to continue on this kind of trajectory. I don't think you'll ever get the kind of returns you could have gotten. I'm not saying you're going to get, it was worth a penny and now it's worth 45,000. So figure out what is that, 4.5 million times your money. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get that kind of return. But again, if you don't look at it as a return and you just look at it as a scarce asset that you want to store, I don't see a problem with putting away a little bit here and there. Might be our best bet.
Yeah, I'm with you. Unless they upset the monopoly board, I think it can work for a lot of things, really.
Yeah, and they I mean, we know that's going to have to happen. It's just a matter of time, right? I mean, the dollar will fail in some way or another. I mean, it has to. They propped it up for too long. They keep handing it out. Like I said, more money was printed in 2020 than the first 200 years of this country.
Yeah, it's insane.
So the blowback is coming.
Well,
bread, $3,000. Bring your freaking wheelbarrow.
You're right. It's coming. It's just that people don't even. I mean, we should have already seen it. The fact that you can't print 40% of money in 1 year and not see price increases unless somebody's controlling all that. So when those things happen, when there's a huge inflation, extreme inflation, then people will all of a sudden have issues, and we'll have to deal with those when we get there. But for me, that would be pretty detrimental. I mean, I need, if all of a sudden $3,000 is not worth anything anymore, I'm gonna have a tough time figuring out how to get by the next day. So I'm always looking for solutions because they're tough to come by. I'm not saying Bitcoin is that solution. I would never put your savings into it. I would never do anything dumb like that. If whatever you put into Bitcoin, you should treat it as you've lost it. That's my advice there. And you might think, well, that's not something I want to get involved in. Yeah, then don't. Because this way you don't lose anything. Then again, if in 10 years some people who did got some sort of reward out of it, don't kick yourself. I'm not doing that today. I'm not kicking myself about 2013. I realize I just want to think futuristic in the going forward. Think of ways to improve my existence going forward. That's all.
All right, guys, and just remember that this wasn't an argument. We're all friends here. We all respect each other. We all try our best to know what we're talking about, and we're all still gonna be friends tomorrow. But I'll sign us off. That was a fun, very, very long live stream. Thanks everybody, and take care, and have a wonderful night. We'll see you next week.
Peace, guys.
By and by for all to see. Line of light, I might believe in heaven. I sign the times and ask you to stay. That's the living story. Take my hand and let's fly away. Manifest inside me, my angel. The universe will speak. Manifest inside me, my angel, for all to see. Manifest inside me, my angel. The universe will speak. Manifest inside me, my angel, for all to see. Manifest inside me, my angel. The universe will speak. Manifest inside me, my angel, for all to see.